Chapter 323. Chu Xiu had made a name for himself in Jianghu. As his subordinates, Du Guangzhong and the others naturally felt honored. Moreover, during this period of time, almost no one dared to provoke them in the entire Guanxi area. Their status was far higher than that of the Jianghu arresters in other prefectures. Did the Wei and Zhang families do anything during this period of time? Chu Xiu asked. Du Guangzhong shook his head and said, "My lord, you had the upper hand previously, and the Wei and Zhang families had already suffered a loss. How would they dare to challenge you now? Therefore, during this period of time, the Wei and Zhang families have been very quiet and did not provoke us. Now that you are back, I think they will not dare to do anything." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That's good. In fact, the Wei and Zhang families will not be able to do anything because they are only Jianghu forces in the Guangzhong area, and the Guangzhong area belongs to the Guangzhong torture room. No matter what they do, it will be useless. The one we really need to be careful of is that old thing, Wei Zheduan. He is now about to retire, and he doesn't even care about Hall Master Guan's impression of him. This kind of person will not bring me any benefits, but will instead cause me some trouble." In front of everyone present, Chu Xiu called Wei Zheduan old thing, but no one present found it strange. They were all Chu Xiu's confidants, and Wei Zheduan was an old man who was about to retire. Even if Chu Xiu asked them to scold Wei Zheduan, they would dare to scold him. After giving a few instructions to the people present and holding a banquet in the evening, Chu Xiu directly went into seclusion. At present, Chu Xiu had gone through several fierce battles in a row. He had accumulated a lot of strength, but at the same time, his vitality was greatly damaged. It was indeed time for him to go into seclusion and rest. Moreover, Chu Xiu felt that he had accumulated enough. With the 5 elemental regeneration pill he obtained from Eastern Qi, he could try to break through the 5 Qi's collecting origin stage. Although he was not 100% sure, Chu Xiu was at least 90% sure. After that, Chu Xiu would try to further comprehend the heaven's sun gazing at air skill. This would require a certain amount of time. Speaking of which, Chu Xiu didn't really like this kind of closed-door training. He preferred to comprehend and break through in battle. Although it was dangerous, it was much faster. However, the path of martial arts required too many sacrifices, and perseverance was one of them. In order to break through bottlenecks, some martial artists in the Jianghu would even choose to go into seclusion for several years or even decades. If he succeeded, his strength would increase greatly. If he failed, he would become a skeleton in a grave. During the closed-door training, it took Chu Xiu a full month to recover his primordial qi. When his primordial qi was almost restored, Chu Xiu took the 5 elemental regeneration pill and began to refine it. The 5 elemental power of the 5 elemental regeneration pill seeped into Chu Xiu's 5 internal organs, making the 5 elemental power in Chu Xiu's body flourish. It constantly polished the power of his 5 internal organs, making the 5 elements one. This was also a painstaking effort. It would take a certain amount of time to refine the medicinal power and push it to perfection. Finally, it would reach the 5 Qi's collecting origin stage. While Chu Xiu was in closed-door training, the outside world seemed very calm. This was especially so in Guanxi. Chu Xiu came back with a powerful aura, which was enough to deter thieves and thieves. Even if some people wanted to cause trouble before, they put away those ideas when Chu Xiu came back. At this time, in a restaurant in Guanxi's Qinzhou prefecture, Fire's slave was sitting in a corner. He ordered a few dishes and drank wine leisurely. He looked very satisfied. Chu Xiu's subordinates had completely controlled the commercial lifeline of the entire Guanxi. Fire's slave was the one who controlled the Qinzhou prefecture. Fire's slave was very satisfied with his current life. He could even wake up from his dreams with a smile. In fact, Fire's slave was a very contented person. He had a difficult past. As long as his current life was a little better than before, he would be satisfied. A contented person would be very happy. Fire's slave was very happy now. Fire's slave was a slave of a foreign tribe in the western region. From a slave who was slaughtered at will, he became an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society and controlled the lives of others. Fire's slave was very satisfied with this. From a killer of the Green Dragon gang who killed all day long, he became a Jianghu arrester of the Guangzhong Punishment Hall. He followed Chu Xiu. Although he was a Jianghu arrester, the inspectors of other prefectures had to treat him politely. He received a lot of salary every month, and he didn't need to fight a few times. He had a lot of time to practice, and he even had time to enjoy life as leisurely as he was now. In the eyes of Fire's slave before, he was living like an immortal. However, although Fire's slave was living like an immortal, it didn't mean that he had slacked off. On the contrary, the more he enjoyed this kind of life, the harder he had to cultivate to maintain this kind of life. Because he knew that all this was brought to him by strength. Without strength, he couldn't escape the Western region, join the Blue Dragon Society, and wouldn't be valued by Chu Xiu as much as he was now. Just as Fire's slave was leisurely drinking and letting his imagination run wild, a few people at a table not far away caught his attention. Those people were young warriors in brocade robes. They looked like young masters from aristocratic families. They weren't strong, but they weren't weak either. They were all in the Xiantian realm. One of the young masters in a blue brocade robe asked the young master in white, "Brother Wei, you haven't come out all this time. Why? Are you grounded by your family's old man?" The young master in white was a direct descendant of the Nine Plains Wei family, Wei Chen. Although he wasn't the son of the family head, Wei Mok, he was the son of an elder with real power in the Wei family. His status in the Wei family wasn't low. Hearing this, he just snorted coldly and said, "Grounded my ass. This young master didn't do anything wrong. What right does he have to ground me? It's just that the old ancestor recently ordered us Wei family disciples to keep a low profile. It's not like you don't know how timid my old man is. He insisted that I stay in the Wei family to cultivate. I've been stifled to death recently." The young master in blue smiled and said, "Could it be because of the Jianghu prefecture's patrol inspector, Chu Xiu? The news that your Wei family suffered a setback at the hands of Chu Xiu has spread throughout the entire Guangxi. It's normal for you to be more careful now." Hearing this, Wei Chen's expression changed. He slammed his wine cup on the table and said coldly, "Han Mu, if you don't know how to speak, then don't speak. What do you mean the Wei family suffered a setback? If it weren't for the disciplinary officer, Chu Xiu would have been crippled by our Wei family. Since Lord Disciplinary Officer has spoken to settle this matter, my Wei family naturally couldn't be bothered to refute Lord Disciplinary Officer's request. Thus, we reluctantly moved to another location to continue our business. Otherwise, do you think my Wei family would so easily hand over our business to Chu Xiu?" Although Wei Chen was a bit of a playboy and his reputation in the Wei family wasn't good, as a Wei family disciple, Wei Chen still knew that everything he had came from the Wei family. Therefore, Wei Chen was very protective of the Wei family's reputation outside. No one could slander it. Han Mu smiled and said, "Brother Wei, everyone knows that your Wei family is powerful in the Guangxi. You don't need to emphasize this point again. However, Chu Xiu is really ruthless. They heard that he had first killed the 5 heroes of the River East in Eastern Qi, and then killed those who had wanted to avenge the 5 heroes of the River East. Finally, he had even killed a great master at the unity of heaven and man realm. TSK, that was really something. I heard that after he returned to the Guangzhong torture room, he even dared to talk back to the disciplinary officer Yin Batong in public. It's easy to imagine what Master Wei is thinking. In my opinion, the Guangxi region might belong to someone else in the future. Who knows, it might even be Chu Xiu's. Han Mu's Han family didn't have any conflicts with Chu Xiu. After Chu Xiu took over the Qinzhou prefecture's business, the Han family was one of the first to choose to side with him. They were very adaptable, so he didn't have any ill feelings towards Chu Xiu. However, Wei Chen sneered disdainfully and said, "You think you're invincible just because you killed a few people outside? What a joke. My Wei family has been in the Guangzhong torture room for hundreds of years. Who does that Chu Xiu think he is? How dare he challenge my Wei family? Ridiculous." Rumors are just rumors. If a unity of heaven expert was so easy to kill, how could someone in that realm be called a great expert? For Chu Xiu to be able to win, it's either because he played some tricks, or because his opponent was too useless. Wei Chen hadn't met Chu Xiu before, but that didn't hide his hatred and malice towards Chu Xiu. Just as Wei Chen was about to say something, a figure stood in front of him. Wei Chen was just about to scold when that figure pressed a palm onto the table. A scarlet-red palm force exploded like a violent flame, and it actually burned the entire table into ashes in an instant. The person who suddenly stood out was Huanu. If Wei Chen and the others were here to vent their grievances, it would have been fine. After all, Jianghu constables weren't Imperial Secret Service and didn't need to inquire about everything. However, the problem was that Wei Chen dared to insult Chu Xiu. This was something Huanu couldn't tolerate. Now that Huanu's strength had reached the physical invulnerability realm, his palm energy was even more condensed. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Is official Chu someone you can insult? Huanu said coldly as he looked at Wei Chen. Wei Chen and the others were so frightened that they immediately ran away. Wei Chen pointed at Huanu and said coldly, "Who are you? Tell me your name." Huanu came out to relax today. Naturally, he wouldn't be wearing the Guangzhong torture room uniform. That was why Wei Chen and the others didn't recognize him. As for Han Mu, he was a local power in Qinzhou Prefecture. During this period of time, Huanu had been hanging around Qinzhou Prefecture. He recognized Huanu and knew his temper and character. Huanu was definitely a ruthless person. When he went crazy, he would even hit himself. Don't be fooled by Huanu's harmless and indifferent appearance. When he really flared up, he dared to kill anyone. Chapter 324. Slandering Chu Xiu in public only to be caught red-handed by one of his subordinates, Wei Chen felt a little awkward. However, in his opinion, he hadn't done anything too overboard. All he did was scold Chu Xiu a few times. What was the big deal? Moreover, Wei Chen had never thought that the Wei family had backed down in front of Chu Xiu. He truly believed that the Wei family had only backed down to give Wei Jiuduan face. Thinking of this, Wei Chen's courage grew. He sneered and said, "You're one of Chu Xiu's subordinates. What, does Chu Xiu think he's the hall master of the Guangzhong torture room? I can't even scold him anymore. This is the Qinzhou Prefecture, not Chu Xiu's Jianzhou Prefecture." Seeing Wei Chen's stubborn appearance, Han Mu and the others subconsciously took a few steps back, distancing themselves from Wei Chen. Of course they could scold Chu Xiu, and there were many people who scolded Chu Xiu in the Jianghu. But the problem was that even if they scolded him, it didn't matter if they scolded him in secret, but if they pointed at Chu Xiu's nose and scolded him to his face, they would be courting death. Although Wei Chen hadn't scolded Chu Xiu to his face, Chu Xiu's subordinates had heard it. Moreover, it was a fire slave who was loyal to Chu Xiu. This matter was probably not going to end well. The fire slave's eyes revealed a cold glint. His loyalty to Chu Xiu was built on the premise that Chu Xiu had given him so many things. At the same time, if he wanted to protect his current position and everything else, he had to display his ability. Wei Chen had insulted Chu Xiu in front of him. If he let this matter go, he would feel sorry for his current position. You want to scold official Chu? Fine, I'll take you back to the Jianzhou Prefecture and let you scold him to your heart's content in front of official Chu. As soon as he finished speaking, the fire slave directly grabbed at Wei Chen. But at this moment, a sword light suddenly fell and blocked the fire slave's path. Wei Chen's eyes lit up. "Uncle Li. Save me." Suddenly, a middle-aged warrior appeared in front of Wei Chen with a sword in hand. He was a guest of the Wei family and had the strength of a physical invulnerability expert. He had been specially sent to protect Wei Chen. He was furious that Wei Chen didn't know what was good for him. It was one thing for him to cause trouble in the Wei family, but he didn't even keep his mouth shut outside. However, he was still a direct descendant of the Wei family. If something happened to him, Wei Chen would also suffer. Therefore, Uncle Li cupped his hands and said, Lord Fire Slave, this child is insensible and has offended Lord Chu Xiu. Please forgive him. Is there a need to make such a big fuss over such a small matter? This brat always came to the Chen State Prefecture to drink with women. My lord once said that people must be responsible for their words and actions. He insulted my lord in front of me. This is not a small matter. Didn't you say that he doesn't know? Fine, hand him to me and let me bring him back to the Jianghu Prefecture. I will teach him a lesson and let him know how to be sensible. Uncle Li's expression changed when he heard the fire slave's words. If Wei Chen was brought back by the fire slave, he would probably lose a layer of skin even if he didn't die. Uncle Li said in a low voice, Lord Fire Lord, are you really not giving my Wei family any face? The fire slave's expression instantly changed from smiling to disdain. He spat and said disdainfully, your Wei family has no face at all. Didn't your family head Wei Mo come to find trouble with my lord? What happened in the end? In the end, he still left with his tail between his legs. Uncle Li frowned. He didn't expect Chu Xiu's underlings to not give the Wei family any face. Young Master Chen, you leave first. I will cover you. In this situation, they had no choice but to fight. Uncle Li turned around and instructed Wei Chen, preparing to have him retreat first. But at this moment, the fire slave sneered, leave? None of you can leave. As soon as he finished speaking, the fire slave took the initiative to attack. His body was like a swimming fish, inexplicably strange. Almost in the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Uncle Li. Uncle Li also didn't expect the fire slave to be so fast. He subconsciously slashed with the long sword in his hand. A few feet long sword energy danced in the air, trying to stop the fire slave. But when he saw the strength of Uncle Li's earth energy, the fire slave sneered in his heart. This guy looked much older than him. He should have stepped into the physical invulnerability stage many years ago. But when he attacked, the sword energy didn't even reach 10 feet. He was simply trash. The fire slave's palm fell. The red earth energy wasn't released, but condensed in his palm. He actually used the earth energy of his palm to resist Uncle Li's sword energy. With a loud explosion, Uncle Li's sword blasted the fire slave several steps away. However, the long sword in his hand instantly turned red. A strange and evil fire power seeped into Uncle Li's body and burned his meridians. He immediately groaned in pain, and his complexion changed dramatically. At this time, the fire slave rushed forward again and formed a seal with both hands. The fire chi in Uncle Li's body seemed to have a life of its own. While it was burning his meridians, it actually brought along his blood chi. When he was sent flying by the fire slave's palm, the fire chi in his body directly returned to the fire slave's body and took away a part of his blood chi. This caused Uncle Li's complexion to turn deathly pale. The fire slave's cultivation method was inherited from a tribe in the western region. It wasn't considered a demonic cultivation method, but it was extremely evil. When the fire energy seeped into the opponent's body, as long as it wasn't completely consumed by the opponent, it could be retracted. It also carried a part of the opponent's chi and blood. It could be said that the more it fought, the stronger it became. After a few moves, Uncle Li was already seriously injured. At this moment, Wei Chen hadn't reached the door yet. He was already out of time. Uncle Li struggled to stand up, but his eyes were already filled with shock. It was understandable that Chu Xiu had the strength to crush those of the same level. But how could his subordinate be so strong? He had just stepped into the physical invulnerability stage and already had such powerful combat strength? What he didn't know was that the fire slave was from the Blue Dragon Society. It was different from him, who wasn't young but could only be a guest in a small family. Although the assassins from the Blue Dragon Society didn't have the highest realm among those of the same age, their combat strength was higher than most people of the same realm. After all, the Blue Dragon Society trained to kill. If you didn't have the strength to fight multiple people of the same level, why would you be an assassin? You would just be waiting to be killed. I told you, none of you can escape today. The fire slave didn't care about Uncle Li, who was already seriously injured. Instead, he turned around and grabbed Wei Qin, who was about to leave the restaurant. Just as he was about to grab Wei Qin, Jiang Taoran, the inspector of the Qin State Prefecture, suddenly appeared and slammed his palm against the fire slave. The powerful palm force sent the fire slave flying, but Jiang Taoran just casually waved his hand to expel the evil fire from the fire slave's palm force. There was still a huge gap between the three-flower realm and the physical invulnerability stage. The fire slave wasn't Chu Xiu, who dared to fight with people 1 or 2 levels higher than him at any time. Looking at Jiang Taoran, the fire slave said coldly, "Sir Jiang, what do you mean? Do you want to protect this guy who dared to slander official Chu?" Jiang Taoran frowned and said, "This is the Qin State Prefecture's territory. Fire slave, give me some face and let this matter go. If you want to fight, can't you fight somewhere else?" As the inspector of the Qin State Prefecture, Jiang Taoran naturally knew that the fight had begun in the restaurant. In fact, he had already rushed over when he heard that Wei Qin was in conflict with the fire slave. Who knew that when he arrived, Jiang Taoran realized that the situation was more troublesome than he had imagined. The fire slave's attitude was tougher than he had imagined. He didn't want to provoke the Nine Plains Wei family, and he didn't want to provoke Chu Xiu either. As long as these two didn't fight in the Qin State Prefecture, everything would be fine. The fire slave said with a warm smile, "Of course, I have to give face to Sir Jiang. I won't kill him. I just need to bring Wei Qin back." Jiang Taoran's face immediately darkened. This fire slave still wants to kill? He coldly snorted and said, "Fire slave, don't play word games with me. You know what I mean. Once we leave the Qin State Prefecture, you can do whatever you want as long as you don't fight in my territory." The fire slave slowly said, "Once we leave the Qin State Prefecture, they will all return to the Wei family. If I let them run away, I won't have the face to continue working under official Chu. Not killing this guy is already giving face to Sir Jiang. I must bring Wei Qin back today." The fire slave's attitude was surprisingly tough. At this moment, Wei Qin also knew that he was afraid. He stood behind Jiang Taoran and trembled, hoping that Jiang Taoran could help him stop the fire slave. Jiang Taoran frowned and was about to say something when he heard the fire slave's cold voice, "Lord Jiang, you're an inspector, so I'll give you face. If you don't come forward, I'll break his sword and behead him. Now, I will give you face, but I hope that Sir Jiang won't embarrass me. I am just a constable and naturally don't dare to challenge Sir Jiang. However, if I can't bring him back today, then when my master comes out of seclusion, I will report to Sir Jiang and have Sir Jiang discuss this personally." The fire slave's threatening tone immediately made Jiang Taoran's face turn red with anger. A constable from the Jianghu actually dared to speak to him like this? However, Jiang Taoran was a person who could endure and adapt to circumstances. He could now see that the distance between him and Chu Xiu had been completely widened. There was no comparison at all. Moreover, Chu Xiu's murderous nature made him a little afraid. Compared to offending the Wei family, he was more afraid of offending Chu Xiu. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Jiang Taoran could only coldly snort and say, "When official Chu comes out of seclusion, I will ask official Chu if he knows that his subordinate is so powerful." After saying this, Jiang Taoran directly turned around and left, leaving behind a dumbfounded Wei Qin. The fire slave still had a faint smile on his face. He wasn't afraid that Jiang Taoran would go to Chu Xiu and complain about him because the fire slave knew Chu Xiu's personality. This person was very protective of his people. Chapter 325. However, it was Chu Xiu's subordinates who had captured him. Even if Wei Dongming was an idiot, he knew the difference between him and Chu Xiu. So, Wei Dongming pulled Uncle Li along and said, "Let's go. Come with me to see the patriarch and ask him to save Chen." However, Wei Mok was still a little unhappy that Wei Dongming had come looking for him. Fire Slave and the others looked at each other. The Wei family had acted quite quickly. They had just asked for Chen back, and the other party had come to ask for him. Wei Dongming was in his 60s and had the strength of the Three-Flower Realm. He was a direct elder of the Wei family. In terms of seniority, he was one generation older than the current patriarch, Wei Mok. However, Wei Dongming was currently in a rage. The more he refuted, the angrier Wei Dongming became. This idiot. Hearing Ghost Hand King's words, Fire Slave was relieved. He immediately called for a Jianghu constable and threw Wei Chen to him. He told him to teach this guy a lesson in the dark dungeon and let him know that a loose tongue can cause trouble. Chu Xiu was protective, and so was the Wei family. Ghost Hand King stroked his beard and said, "So what if he's a direct descendant?" Sir said himself that the Wei family is nothing to worry about, so don't worry. If he dares to insult Sir, throw him into the black prison and let someone teach him a lesson. Whether he lives or dies will be decided after Sir comes out of seclusion. He had given birth to Wei Chen at an old age, so he doted on him. This caused Wei Chen to have a personality that did not know the severity of the situation. He was indeed a guest of the Wei family, but he was also a person who needed to die. He had seen Fire Slave's strength and knew that he dared to kill people. He was sure that if he dared to act recklessly, Fire Slave would definitely kill him. However, at this time, Wei Dongming showed a smile that was uglier than crying. If the Wei family's token was useful, I would have used it long ago. Chen would not have been taken away by others. At this time, in the Jianghu Prefecture Inspector Hall, Fire Slave carried Wei Chen back to the main hall. However, as soon as he entered, he found Tangya, Yan Bugui, Wolf King, and the others were all there. But at this time, someone outside reported that Wei Chongling had arrived. Wei Mok didn't wait for Wei Dongming to speak as he waved his hand and said, "All right, you don't have to say anything more. No matter who Wei Chen offends, you just need to step forward and show the Wei family's name to resolve the matter. But when Wei Chen comes back, lock him up for me. As a disciple of the Wei family, it's fine if he's not strong enough, but he's always causing trouble for the Wei family. This kind of disciple should be taught a lesson." Wei Mok thought about it and suddenly said, "You just said that this matter was decided by Chu Xiu's subordinate, Fire Slave, and that Chu Xiu didn't participate in it?" The Ghost Hand Monarch said sinisterly, "Lord Wei is very awe-inspiring. You even dare to come to my Jianghu prefecture to ask for someone. If official Chu wasn't in seclusion right now, I reckon that Lord Wei wouldn't even dare to step through the doors of my Jianghu Prefecture Inspector Hall, right? It's true that we captured him and he's locked up in the Black Prison. But he dared to insult official Chu. Without official Chu's permission, no one can take this person away." Wei Chen was the most troublemaker among the younger generation of the Wei family. Wei Mok had already cleaned up after him several times. But the problem was that Wei Chen had offended Chu Xiu. This caused Wei Dongming, who had just received the news, to immediately panic. "What? Chu Xiu?" After Fire Slave left, Uncle Li stamped his feet and returned to the Wei family first to inform the elder of the Wei family, Wei Dongming, who was Wei Chen's father. Normally, their branches were scattered throughout Guanxi. When they needed to report some miscellaneous matters, they would return to the main hall. But they would never gather together like this. Wei Dongming hurriedly said, "I wouldn't dare." "Patriarch, please calm down." The Black Prison was a place where the patrol hall temporarily locked up criminals and thieves. However, there were very few people here. Fire Slave slapped his head. He had been too carefree during this period of time and had really forgotten about this. Wei Mok cursed inwardly. This Wei Chen's mouth had no filter. Sooner or later, he would die because of this mouth of his. Ghost Hand King smiled and said, "Tomorrow is the day of salary distribution. If you don't take action actively, shouldn't you be more active in receiving your salary?" He pointed at Uncle Li and yelled, "What did I tell you? I told you to follow Chen at all times. But in the end, you just watched him cause trouble." Wei Dongming hurriedly said, "Patriarch, you've misunderstood. No matter how willful Chen is, he wouldn't dare to act presumptuously in Chu Xiu's territory. This time's matter was purely an accident. It was also Chu Xiu's subordinates who were too overbearing. It's Chu Xiu. Therefore, Uncle Li could only watch as Fire Slave took Wei Chen away. He didn't dare to say a word. Wei Mok snorted coldly and said, "What else do you want? Do you want me to take action personally or have the great ancestor take action before you're satisfied? Will you only be satisfied if the entire Wei family is sacrificed for your precious son?" But now that Chu Xiu was in seclusion, there was only a group of ordinary Jianghu constables in the Jianzhou constabulary hall. There wasn't even a three-flower realm martial artist. Wei Changling also had confidence. Since the last time he fought with Chu Xiu and lost the upper hand to Chu Xiu, Wei Mok seemed to have been provoked and spent most of his time in seclusion. Jiang Tao retreated. Wei Chen, who was isolated and helpless, was captured by Fire Slave. He wanted to break free but was knocked unconscious by the Fire Slave's chi. If this was an ordinary time, Wei Chen would have no problem doing this. He could protect the entire Guanxi Wei family. Wei Changling was an inspector of Guanxi. With Chu Xiu in seclusion, there was no one in the Jianzhou constabulary hall who could stop Wei Changling. As he spoke, Wei Dongming pulled Uncle Li to Wei Mok's seclusion place. Uncle Li could leave, but if he left now, he would be offending the Wei family. Unless he didn't want to stay in Guangzhou anymore, he would not have a good ending if he offended the Wei family. Wei Chen's mouth was on him. What could he do? Could it be that he wouldn't let Wei Chen speak at all? The Fire Slave was not an idiot. Although he had brought Wei Chen, he didn't really attack along the way. He was worried that it would affect Chu Xiu. Seeing that the person was Wei Dongming, Wei Mok couldn't help but frown. What's going on? Who did Wei Chen offend? Wei Changling was a collateral relative of the Wei family. Although he was also at the Three-Flower Realm, Wei Dongming still looked down on him. If other people or forces touched his son, Wei Dongming, as an elder of the Wei family, could make the other party release Wei Changling and apologize with a word. The other people in the Wei family knew that Wei Mok liked to be quiet. Therefore, when he was in seclusion, they would try not to disturb him. Now that the door to his seclusion place was being knocked, could something big have happened? Wei Dongming nodded. This must be the Fire Slave's personal decision. The Fire Slave had said it himself. Moreover, Chu Xiu was in seclusion now. Everyone in Guanxi knew this. Uncle Li opened his mouth but didn't say anything. Uncle Li, who was already seriously injured, wanted to intervene when he saw this scene, but he forced himself to stop. When Wei Mok opened the door, he saw Wei Dongming say with bloodshot eyes, "Patriarch, please save Chen." After a while, Wei Mok finally said, "Since Chu Xiu doesn't know about it, then it's much easier. Right now, our relationship with Chu Xiu is a bit sensitive. Our Wei family is not ready to officially fall out with him. Since it's his men who captured Wei Changling, let's let Wei Changling go. He is now the inspector of the Guangzhou torture room. As long as Chu Xiu doesn't show up, he still has some advantage over the constables under Chu Xiu." At this time, the Ghost Hand King saw Wei Chen in the Fire Slave's hand. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "Who is this guy in your hand?" Wei Changling walked into the hall aggressively. He looked around and said coldly, "Where's Wei Chen? Hand him over." He was in seclusion right now, but Wei Dongming had come to interrupt his seclusion for his son. This really didn't know what was important. This made Wei Mok unhappy. Wei Dongming was getting more and more muddle-headed as he grew older. Wei Mok's expression immediately changed when the door to the seclusion room was knocked. Wei Mok frowned and said, "He dares to ignore the Wei family. Who did Wei Chen offend? The Yuan Continent's Zhang family?" He couldn't help but say in surprise, "What day is it today? Why are you all back?" Wei Mok couldn't be bothered to waste words with this guy. He sent someone to inform Wei Changling and then went into seclusion again. Because after the criminals were caught, as long as the evidence was conclusive, they would be executed immediately. So they couldn't stay long in the black prison. If Chu Xiu was here, Wei Changling wouldn't dare to be so arrogant. Fire Slave threw Wei Chen to the ground and said, an idiot disciple of the Wei family insulted Darren in front of me. I brought him back to teach him a lesson. This guy seems to be a direct descendant of the Wei family and has special people to protect him. Ghost Hand King, take a look. Will there be any problems that will affect Darren? Wei Mok's expression changed and he shouted, "What did I say before I went into seclusion? I told you not to provoke Chu Xiu, not to provoke Chu Xiu. When the time is right, you will naturally be able to take care of Chu Xiu. But your precious son dared to go to the Jianghu government to find trouble with Chu Xiu. Is he tired of living?" As he spoke, Wei Dongming let Uncle Li, who was behind him, tell him everything that had happened. He did not exaggerate or embellish the story. No matter who was right or wrong, his own disciple had been captured by the other to be taught a lesson. If the Wei family didn't even have the slightest reaction, then their reputation in the Guangxi region would plummet. Seeing that Uncle Li didn't speak, Wei Dongming vented some of his anger. But then he became slightly anxious. Wei Dongming said hesitantly, "Wei Changling. Can he do it?" But cursing was cursing. Wei Chen would definitely save him because of his face. Chapter 326. This was not the first time Wei Changling had suffered at the hands of Chu Xiu. Just as the Ghost Hand King had said, if Chu Xiu was not in seclusion, he might not even have the courage to step into the Jianghu government hall. But the problem was that Chu Xiu was in seclusion right now and would not come out for a while. What did he have to fear? Wei Changling looked at the Ghost Hand King and snorted. "You do not know the hierarchy. Did Chu Xiu teach you like this?" Also, even if Wei Chen cursed Chu Xiu, he did it in the Chenzhou government, not your Jianghu government. You Chu Xiu's subordinates are so domineering. You want to meddle in the affairs of other prefectures? Then is the torturer of this Guangxi region Lord Wei Jiuduan or Chu Xiu? The Ghost Hand King sneered. Wei Changling thought that they were so arrogant that they wanted to play word games with them. In terms of strength, the Ghost Hand King was not as strong as Wei Changling, but he was experienced. He did not waste words with Wei Changling and said coolly, "Official Wei, please return. I only have one thing here. We will not hand over the person. If you want the person, wait for Official Chu to come out of seclusion and talk to him. If Official Chu says we will hand over, we will hand over." A cold light flashed in Wei Changling's eyes. Not handing over? I will take the person away today. I want to see who dares to stop me. As he finished speaking, more than a dozen martial practitioners surged in from outside the Jianghu Inspector Hall. These were the people Wei Changling had brought. But when they heard the noise, Du Guangzhong and the others led their people to surround Wei Changling in the center with vigilant expressions. There were two groups of people under Chu Xiu's command. One group was the Jianghu constables who had been the Jianghu inspector like Du Guangzhong. The other group were assassins from the Blue Dragon Society. These two groups were of different origins and had completely different personalities. While there had never been any conflict or enmity in the past, they had always disliked each other. However, now that someone had come to cause trouble, their little conflict was nothing. They could directly unite against the enemy. Wei Changling sneered and said, "Your hearts are very united. But do you think you are Chu Xiu? Do you think you can look down on a three-flower realm martial artist like me?" As he finished speaking, Wei Changling took a step forward. Powerful energy exploded around him. The cold and dark energy covered the entire hall. Changling was not afraid of acting in Jianghu. In any case, he had reason and evidence. Logically speaking, the fire slave was in the wrong in this matter. Capturing people from across worlds would make Chu Xiu's side seem domineering. So Wei Changling was right to ask for people. Right now, Chu Xiu had not appeared. He was the inspector, and the others were just ordinary Jianghu constables. If he acted, he was helping Chu Xiu teach his subordinates a lesson. If the Ghost Hand King and the others attacked him, then they did not know their place. But according to Chu Xiu's personality, he was never reasonable. If Chu Xiu came out of seclusion after this, he would most likely come to make trouble for him. But Wei Changling had confidence. Wei Mok had sent him here. The Wei family would naturally stand behind him. It was the same for Wei Jiuduan. He had long since heard that Wei Jiuduan had a falling out with Chu Xiu. Now that he was in the right in this matter, it was obvious who Wei Jiuduan would help. Wei Changling said coldly, "I will give you one last chance. Will you hand over the people or not?" The Ghost Hand King shook his head and said, "Sir Wei seems to have made up your mind. Tangya, Yen Bugui, I leave this to you too." As soon as he finished speaking, Ghost Hand King immediately retreated. Tangya and Yen Bugui, one lazily and the other slowly stood up. The lazy one was Tangya, and the slow one was Yen Bugui. Both of them used to be the gold medal assassins of the Heavenly Sin branch. After joining Chu Xiu's team, they didn't really fight seriously. They spent most of their time cultivating in seclusion. At this time, they had already reached the peak of the physical invulnerability realm. They were only half a step away from the three-flower realm. The Ghost Hand King knew their strength. There was no need to disturb Wei Changling. The two of them were enough to deal with him. Tangya toyed with the dragon tail soul-chasing dart in his hand, a lazy smile on his face as he said, "We naturally can't compare to the Lord, but unfortunately, you don't even have the qualifications to compare to the Lord." Yen Bugui did not speak. He could not be bothered to speak. He took off the heavy sword on his back and dragged it on the ground. Wei Changling laughed in anger and said, "Good, good, arrogant enough. Today, I will teach you what it means to respect your superiors." As he spoke, the long sword in Wei Changling's hand was covered in thick icicle energy. It stabbed towards Tangya with deep coldness. Tangya did not attack, but Yen Bugui's heavy sword was raised. When he had been in the Blue Dragon Society, he and Tangya had carried out many missions together. The two had great teamwork. Now that they were working together, so what if he was at the Three-Flower Realm? They also had the confidence to kill Wei Changling. Yen Bugui's sword move was the pinnacle of power. His sword path was even more extreme than Qingbuhui, who had been killed by Chu Xiu. He had given up everything to pursue extreme violence and power. Misty Gang Qi condensed on the blade of the heavy sword. It was not released, but his sword seemed to carry the weight of thousands of kilograms. When it came crashing down, there was a violent sonic boom in the air. The heavy sword and long sword collided. In front of that extreme power, Wei Changling's sword energy shattered. While he had negated the power, his right hand still felt numb, and his eyes showed shock. Where did this monster come from? Three-Flower Realm martial artists were strong because they had formed the three flowers above their heads. Their mind, energy, and spirit became one, and their control over their energy greatly increased. Their explosive power far surpassed physical invulnerability realm martial artists. But right now, Yen Bugui had not even stepped into the Three-Flower Realm. His sword strike contained this level of power. He was not weaker than him. No, in terms of pure power, Yen Bugui was stronger than him. At the moment when Yen Bugui made his move, Tangya also made his move. Tangya's attack was much more beautiful and violent than Yen Bugui's. In that moment, a string of golden light appeared in his hand. It was a dozen or so dragon tail soul-chasing darts connected head to tail, slashing towards Wei Changling with sharp energy. The dragon tail soul-chasing darts seemed to have a life of their own under Tangya's control. They changed trajectories within the half-dragon and stabbed towards Wei Changling's major meridians. Wei Changling snorted coldly. The sword in his hand changed directions. The dense ice energy was like a snowstorm that sent the dragon tail soul-chasing darts flying. But at the same time, Yen Bugui's heavy sword attacked with the weight of Mount Tai. This simple attack was even more powerful than before. Tangya's figure floated behind Wei Changling like a willow catkin. His body twisted in the air. In a flash, countless cold lights exploded. These were tiny silver needles. They fell like a torrential rain of pear flowers. They were dazzling, but also extremely dangerous. Only the heavens knew if Tangya had put poison in the silver needles. Wei Changling did not dare to underestimate them. He could only explode with all the energy in his body to block. But Tang Ye's attack had sealed off all possible places for him to dodge. He could only take Yan Bugui's blow head-on. With a loud explosion, Wei Changling was thrown back several steps by Yan Bugui's blow. His face suddenly paled. But then an abnormal flush of red appeared on his face. But he suppressed it. Looking at Tang Ye and Yan Bugui, a hint of shock flashed through Wei Changling's eyes. Where did Chu Xiu find these two monsters? Yan Bugui's sword move was heavy, violent and savage, violent to the extreme. On the other hand, Tang Ye's movement technique and concealed weapons were incomparably strange and sinister. With the two of them working together, Tang Ye had used an endless stream of hidden weapons to seal off the space around him while assisting Yan Bugui, forcing him to fight back head-on. He was a martial artist at the Three-Flower Realm, yet he had almost been cut by Yan Bugui's sword to the point of vomiting blood. But before Wei Changling could react, Tang Ye and Yan Bugui once again pressed forward. But this time, the two had reversed, with Yan Bugui as support and Tang Ye as the main. Yan Bugui's sword presence forced Wei Changling to not dare to face it head-on. Tang Ye switched to his two daggers and fought close to Wei Changling. His vicious fighting style forced Wei Changling into a corner. Wei Changling suddenly shouted angrily. Ice appeared on the long sword in his hand. His blood merged into it. The icy blue sword aura faintly showed a strange blood color. The storm-like sword aura slashed out and collided with Yan Bugui's sword. With a loud bang, Yan Bugui was thrown back dozens of feet, his heavy sword almost flying out of his hand. Wei Changling was at the Three-Flower Realm and had the advantage in explosive power. At this moment, he had unleashed the power of his qi and blood. In terms of strength, he had already overwhelmed Yan Bugui. But at this time, the hilts of Tang Ye's two short blades faced each other and formed a spinning blade. They immediately gave off a blinding golden light and slashed towards Wei Changling, who had just unleashed his full power. At the same time, Tang Ye's energy exploded. He threw out countless hidden weapons in that moment. Soul-chasing nails, plum-flower darts, bone-piercing needles, hand-flick arrows, a string of innumerable hidden weapons flew towards Wei Changling. There was no order at all. There was only one word: many. Only the heavens knew how Tang Ye had hidden so many hidden weapons on him. At this time, half of the hall was filled with Tang Ye's hidden weapons. Tang Ye's face was slightly pale after releasing so many hidden weapons in an instant. But within the cover of the hidden weapons, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. Wei Changling used almost all of his energy to barely neutralize the hidden weapons. This caused him to sigh in relief. But at this time, the whirling blade that Tang Ye had first thrown out flew out of nowhere and cut Wei Changling's longsword in half. It narrowly cut across Wei Changling's arm. Blood sprayed and it almost cut off his entire right arm. Chapter 327. Blood spilled from Wei Changling's arm. At the same time, cold sweat streaked across his head. He had not expected that he would almost be crippled by two physical invulnerability experts. Just now, if he had been just a hair away, his arm would have been cut off by Tang Ye's blade. Without another word, Wei Changling turned and fled, not caring about his face as an inspector. If they continued to fight, Wei Changling did not dare to gamble on whether Tang Ye and Yan Bugui would dare to kill him. He only had one life. Seeing Wei Changling flee, Yan Bugui frowned and immediately wanted to give chase. However, he was stopped by Tang Ye. Do not chase. I am exhausted. You alone cannot catch up to him. Also, official has not come out of seclusion. You're not really preparing to kill him? Yan Bugui was skilled in strength, and he was only skilled in strength. If Wei Changling wanted to run, Yan Bugui could not catch up. Also, their statuses were different. If they killed Wei Changling, they would be committing a crime against their superiors. At least from the perspective of the Guanzhong torture room, they could not stand. Hearing Tang Ye's words, Yen Bugue put down his heavy sword and slowly tied it to his back. Tangya turned to the Ghost Hand King and said, I think the Wei family will not let this go. We captured the person and lost face for the Wei family. Wei Chongling came to ask for the person, and we seriously injured him. This is a slap to the face of the Wei family. The Wei family will not tolerate this. The Ghost Hand King snickered and said, no rush. Official will probably come out of seclusion at that time. Do you think the Wei family can rise in front of official? When Tangya thought of Chu Xiu's murderous nature, he could not help but nod. In reality, Chu Xiu's reputation was greater than the Guangzhong torture room in the outside world, especially around the eastern Qi Ji Zhou government. If it was the local martial arts factions of the Ji Zhou government, those with similar strength to the Wei family, they would not even have the courage to challenge Chu Xiu. If the Wei family had learned their lesson, they might restrain themselves. Unfortunately, once Chu Xiu decided to teach them a lesson, the price they would have to pay would be the destruction of their families. Chu Xiu did not know what was happening in the outside world. After nearly a month of seclusion, Chu Xiu had stepped into the Five Qis origin realm. The increase in strength that the Five Qis origin realm brought to Chu Xiu wasn't as earth-shaking as when he reached the physical invulnerability stage of 3 flowers at one's prominence. However, the power in Chu Xiu's body had become more balanced, making his qi more perfect. A martial Dao grandmaster once said that heaven and earth were a big world, and the human body was a small world. Practicing martial arts was to cultivate oneself, and comprehending the Dao was to comprehend heaven and earth. Chu Xiu's essence, qi, and spirit became one, and the 5 elements in his 5 viscera circulated, connecting their heads and tails, reaching a very delicate balance. The total amount of spiritual qi had increased a little, but not by much. However, when Chu Xiu attacked again, his explosive power, control of spiritual qi, and recovery ability were much stronger than when he was at the 3 flowers at one's prominence realm. After stepping into the 5 Qis origin realm, Chu Xiu did not immediately come out of seclusion. Instead, he studied the heavens sun gazing at air technique. Unfortunately, although he had made a breakthrough in his realm, the heavens sun gazing at air technique did not improve at all. This strange technique still needed to be comprehended by observing heaven and earth, or comprehending the Tao during a battle to make a breakthrough. The real function of the heavens sun gazing at air technique was to predict the changes of heaven and earth. Previously, when Chu Xiu used the heavens sun gazing at air technique to see through his opponent's flaws, it was actually just a small skill that he had just learned. It was said that when the heavens sun gazing at air technique was cultivated to great success, the user would be able to tell how many breaths it would take for a breeze to blow a leaf off a tree and where it would fall. The karma calculation was simply terrifying. It was a world of difference from the current cultivation of Chu Xiu, who had just started. Seeing through his opponent's flaws and hoping that his opponent would make a mistake would only be considered passive. If his opponent was extremely calm and did not make the slightest mistake when attacking, Chu Xiu's heaven sun gazing at air technique would be useless. The last battle with Feng Wuling was purely a fluke. Feng Wuling's state of mind had too many flaws. If it had been a warrior at the unity of heaven and man realm, even if their strength was not as strong as Feng Wuling, as long as their state of mind had no flaws, Chu Xiu's battle would have been a disaster. Therefore, right now, Chu Xiu still had to cultivate the heavens sun gazing at air technique to small success. Only then would he be able to show the true power of the heavens sun gazing at air technique. Stepping out of seclusion, Chu Xiu's movements immediately attracted the attention of Ghost Hand King and the others. Congratulations to Sir for entering the 5 energies gathering realm. Your strength has improved greatly. Ghost Hand King and the others congratulated with joy. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, no need to be so courteous. Who attacked in the patrol hall previously? Although Chu Xiu had been in seclusion before, he was not in a life-or-death seclusion. At such a close distance, he could naturally sense the movements outside. However, Ghost Hand King knew his limits. Since he did not go to find Chu Xiu to come out of seclusion, it proved that he could still control the situation. Therefore, Chu Xiu did not immediately come out of seclusion. Instead, He split a part of his attention to sense the movements outside. If things changed, he would be able to rescue in time. However, the auras of the battle later came. Tang Ye and Yan Bugui had worked together to defeat the enemy. Chu Xiu could sense this, so he did not intervene and continued to seclusion. At this time, if Wei Changling knew all this, he would probably be laughing up his sleeve. This was because Tang Ye and Yan Bugui had worked together to defeat him. Otherwise, Chu Xiu would have personally acted. Once Chu Xiu came out of seclusion, the matter would not be able to be resolved. At the very least, Wei Changling would not be able to walk out of the Jianghu patrol hall. After Ghost Hand King explained the matter to Chu Xiu, he asked, "Sir, I feel that the Wei family will not let this matter rest. How should we deal with this matter?" Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Go cripple Wei Chen and teach him a lesson so that he will know what to say in the future. As for the Wei family, do not care about them. If the Wei family dares to attack again, I do not mind making the Wei family disappear from Guanxi. This is something that will happen sooner or later." Ghost Hand King nodded. He had guessed correctly about Chu Xiu's personality. Chu Xiu was very domineering. As expected, this was the result in the end. Of course, while Chu Xiu was domineering, he only dared to be domineering when he had absolute power. When he had just joined the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu's attitude towards Guan Xiu and Wei Zhuoduan could be said to be very respectful. At this time, on the Wei family side, when Wei Changling brought the news back to the Wei family and recounted the matter, Wei Mok was immediately enraged. He smashed the teacup in his hand and shouted, "Idiot! You can't even handle such a small matter." Wei Changling said with a sad face, "Patriarch, it is not that I held back. Tang Ye and Yan Bugui, who are under Chu Xiu, are really abnormal. Although they are only in the physical invulnerability realm, they can already stand shoulder to shoulder with a three-flower realm martial artist. With the two of them attacking me, and with so many martial artists watching from the Jianghu prefecture, I could not use my strength at all." In order to make his defeat look more dignified, Wei Changling exaggerated the scene several times. He made it sound like Tang Ye and Yan Bugui were directly attacking Chu Xiu. Wei Mok frowned and turned to the back residence where the Wei family patriarch was in seclusion. Wei Mok was a little uncertain now that such a thing had happened. He needed to discuss it with the patriarch. In the back residence of the Wei family patriarch frowned when he heard this. He sighed and said, "The Wei family wants to keep a low profile, but we still have to act now. It is impossible for the Wei family to back down from a small matter like this." Wei Mok nodded and said, "Originally, it was only Wei Chen, a junior, who insulted Chu Xiu. In the end, Chu Xiu's subordinates were very domineering. They actually crossed the border and brought him back to the Jianghu prefecture. Now, Wei Changling went once and returned in defeat. He was also seriously injured by Chu Xiu's subordinates. This hatred is already big enough. If the Wei family backs down now, we will lose even more face." The Wei family patriarch stood up and said, "Let's go. Come with me to see Wei Zhuoduan." Wei Mok said in surprise, "Wei Zhuoduan can still control Chu Xiu now?" The fact that Wei Zhuoduan and Chu Xiu were not on good terms with each other had already spread throughout the entire Guanxi. Everyone knew that Chu Xiu's influence had already grown and that he could even stand up to Wei Zhuoduan as an equal. The Wei family patriarch said coolly, "Even if he cannot control it, he must. I have interacted with Wei Zhuoduan for so many years and understand his personality. This person is narrow-minded and greedy. His desire for power is especially great. If other people encountered a subordinate like Chu Xiu, they would most likely not be enemies with him since they are nearing retirement. Would it not be better to form a good relationship with him? But if it is Wei Zhuoduan, even though he is nearing retirement, he cannot tolerate a subordinate like Chu Xiu who dares to challenge him. Even without us, Wei Zhuoduan is probably thinking about how to deal with Chu Xiu. Now that we are going to give him benefits and a reason, Wei Zhuoduan will not refuse, and he has no reason to refuse." In the Guanxi Torture Hall branch, Wei Zhuoduan, who was sitting in his study and drinking tea, had a gloomy expression. As a torture officer, he could not do anything to his own patrol inspector. This was probably the first time in all these years in the Guangzhong torture room. But it was precisely because of this that Wei Zheduan was even more dissatisfied. He had to suppress Chu Xiu before he retired. As for forming a good relationship with him, Wei Zheduan had never thought about it. After he retired, he was prepared to take his savings and leave the Guangzhong torture room to retire elsewhere. All these years, due to his personality, Wei Zheduan had offended many people. Among the torture officers, Yin Batong was his archenemy. Xiao Yi and Chu Simo did not have a good relationship with him. This included his own subordinates. Other than his foster son Yang Ling, everyone else probably had an opinion of him. Moreover, some of Wei Zheduan's actions had caused Guan Siyu to be displeased. If he continued to stay in the Guangzhong torture room, he would be an idiot. Chapter 328. Wei Zheduan was surprised by forefather Wei's sudden visit. He naturally knew the Wei clan's ancestor and had many dealings with him when they were young. Of course, with their personalities and standpoints, these so-called dealings were naturally more confrontational and conflicting. But as forefather Wei went into seclusion, the two did not have much interaction. Wei Zheduan knew that forefather Wei was famed for his fear of death. When his vitality started to decline, this old man did not dare to stay in the Jianghu. He hid in the back residence of the Wei family to recuperate and wanted to extend his lifespan. When forefather Wei saw Wei Zheduan, he smiled and cupped his hands. We have not seen each other for many years. Official Wei is still as elegant as ever. Wei Zheduan put on a fake smile and said, the two of us can be considered old acquaintances, so don't talk so much nonsense. All these years, you haven't taken a single step out of the Wei clan. Why have you suddenly come to find me? Seeing Wei Zheduan so direct, forefather Wei did not keep him in suspense. He said gravely, Chu Xiu. The Wei family has come for Chu Xiu. Wei Zheduan frowned and said, what do you mean? Forefather Wei said gravely, official Wei, you should know what I mean. Chu Xiu has wild ambitions. As long as he exists, Guanxi will not have a day of peace. This time, Chu Xiu was so arrogant that he went to other prefectures to capture people. I sent Wei Chengling to demand an explanation, but he was wounded by Chu Xiu's subordinates. Lord Wei, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but Chu Xiu's influence in the Guanxi region is stronger than yours. After a period of time, I'm afraid that the entire Guanxi region will only know of Chu Xiu and not you, Lord Wei. Wei Zheduan's expression changed, but he still snorted. So what? This old man is about to retire. Do I still care about these things like fame and fortune? The Wei clan ancestor revealed a faint smile. Master Wei, you and I have known each other for several decades. Do you think I don't know what kind of person you are? Can you just swallow your anger? Just now, you told me not to keep you in suspense. Now, let's be frank. Chu Xiu capturing someone from my Wei family is a small matter, but my Wei family losing face is a big matter. So, my Wei family must get this person back, and Chu Xiu must give in. As for you, Lord Wei, I'm sure you also want to suppress Chu Xiu. This time, you and I can join forces and completely suppress Chu Xiu's arrogance. This time, Chu Xiu is in the wrong. Don't tell me that Lord Wei doesn't even have the courage to touch Chu Xiu. Hearing this, Wei Zheduan's face immediately revealed a hint of anger. However, before Wei Zheduan could react, the Wei clan's patriarch handed him a card. Wei Zheduan opened it and saw a large number of precious spirit medicines and cultivation resources. The Wei clan's patriarch said indifferently, I knew that Lord Wei was preparing to retire, so I prepared these gifts for you in advance. Wei Zheduan closed the card and thought for a while before saying, in 3 days, come to the main hall to collect the person. I will ask Chu Xiu to hand over the person. The Wei clan's patriarch nodded and left. Just as the Wei clan's patriarch had said, Wei Zheduan had long wanted to suppress Chu Xiu. Now that he had this opportunity, it was just right. especially since the benefits that the Wei clan's patriarch had given him were something that Wei Zhuduan could not refuse. Wei Zhuduan ordered someone to call Yang Ling over. After entering, Yang Ling immediately bowed and said, "Foster father, why are you looking for me?" Seeing Yang Ling, Wei Zhuduan's expression became a little better. The Guanxi patrol envoys were either disloyal like Chu Xiu, or like Jiang Taoran and the others, each with their own schemes and eagerly waiting for him to leave. The one who was truly on his side and reliable was his foster son, Yang Ling, whom he had been nurturing and taking care of all this time. Thinking of this, Wei Zhuduan really felt that he had treated Yang Ling unfairly all these years. Looking at Yang Ling, Wei Zhuduan's expression softened a little. He said, "You should have heard about what Chu Xiu has done during this period of time. Now that the Wei clan has come knocking, I is also prepared to suppress this Chu Xiu. Go and tell Chu Xiu that in 3 days, bring the person to the branch and hand the person over to the Wei clan." Yang Ling said hesitantly, "But foster father, with Chu Xiu's personality, will he hand the person over so easily?" Wei Zhuduan said indifferently, "Not handing the person over is disobeying orders. Don't forget, I am still the disciplinary officer. It is a big taboo to go against one's superiors in the Guangzhong torture room. If Chu Xiu dares to disobey orders, although I won't go too far, it won't be a problem for me to take away one of his prefectures. Even Hall leader Guan won't be able to say anything. Hall leader Guan is impartial and impartial. Even if he is biased towards Chu Xiu, he will still have to consider the rules of the Guangzhong torture room, right?" Yang Ling's heart trembled. According to what Wei Zhuduan said, regardless of whether Chu Xiu handed the person over or not, he would actually be at a disadvantage. If he handed the person over, he would definitely lose his reputation. As long as he handed the person over, the people of Guanxi would definitely think, "So what if you, Chu Xiu, are arrogant? In the end, you still have to compromise." If he didn't hand the person over, Wei Zhuduan would use the crime of disobeying orders to take away one of the prefectures under Chu Xiu. This was even more unsolvable. A higher official could crush a person to death. Unless Guan Siyu could step forward to stop it, could Chu Xiu kill Wei Zhuduan? However, according to Yang Ling's understanding of Guan Siyu's personality, it seemed like she wouldn't intervene in such matters. After thinking for a moment, Yang Ling respectfully cupped his hands at Wei Zhuduan and said, "Yes, I will do it now." After exiting the main door, Yang Ling immediately headed to the Jianghu prefecture. At that moment, he was already completely tied up in Chu Xiu's carriage. It was too late to leave now. Once he entered the hall, Yang Ling said to Chu Xiu in a deep voice, "Official Chu, something bad has happened. Wei Zhuduan has joined forces with the 9 Plains Wei family to deal with you." With that, Yang Ling directly told him about the conspiracy and plans of Wei Zhuduan and the Wei family. Wei Zhuduan thought that he only had one loyal godson, Yang Ling, under him. If he knew that Yang Ling had sold him out in such a short time, Wei Zhuduan would probably go berserk from anger before Chu Xiu could do anything. After hearing this, Chu Xiu's eyes immediately revealed a hint of coldness. To be honest, Chu Xiu actually didn't want to deal with Wei Zhuduan so soon. Previously, Chu Xiu's plan was to make Wei Zhuduan a mere figurehead step by step. With Wei Zhuduan as the disciplinary officer above him, Chu Xiu's authority would be completely above Wei Zhuduan's. This way, once he reached the unity of heaven and man realm, he would naturally become the disciplinary officer. The rules of the Guangzhong torture room had always been like this. The torture officers were all promoted from their respective territories. This way, they would have a certain foundation and would be easier to manage. With Chu Xiu's current power in Guanxi, as long as he reached the unity of heaven and man realm step by step, the position of Guanxi torture officer would definitely belong to him. But now that Wei Zhuduan insisted on finding trouble with him, Chu Xiu couldn't care so much. Regardless of whether it was the first or the second of Wei Zhuduan's conditions, Chu Xiu wouldn't agree to them. Since that was the case, Chu Xiu wouldn't choose either and would choose to completely fall out with them. After calling the Ghost Hand King and the others over, Chu Xiu explained his plan to them. The Ghost Hand King and the others could accept it, but Yang Ling's eyes widened in shock. He hesitated and said, "Official Chu, is this really feasible?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Nothing in this world is 100% feasible. I can only reduce the variables to the minimum. Yang Ling, you are the most crucial part of this. If you don't participate, I won't force you. If you stand on my side, there will definitely be a place for you in the Guanxi area in the future. You know my personality. I'm not Wei Jiuduan, and I don't like to paint pavilions in the sky for others." Yang Ling smiled bitterly and said, "Whatever Lord says, this subordinate will do." Chu Xiu gave him two choices, but he didn't dare to choose the former. He had heard everything, and Chu Xiu had something on him. If he didn't want to follow Chu Xiu, then there was only one path: death. Chu Xiu didn't force him, because there was no need to force him to choose death. 3 days later, Chu Xiu brought the Ghost Hand King and the others to the Guanxi branch. Actually, ever since Chu Xiu came to the Guanxi branch, he rarely came to the branch. Chu Xiu couldn't be bothered to deal with Wei Jiuduan, and he didn't want to deal with Wei Jiuduan either. He raised his head and glanced at the sky. Perhaps from today onwards, this place would be under his control. Of course, it depended on whether things went smoothly. After the surrounding warriors of the Guanxi branch saw Chu Xiu, they all greeted Chu Xiu. Their attitudes were not bad. In fact, Chu Xiu's reputation in the entire Guanzhong torture room was still very good. Although he was mostly cursed in the outside world, he was, after all, a member of the Guanzhong torture room. For so many years, the Guanzhong torture room had always been unknown. It wasn't easy for a person like Chu Xiu to become famous outside. Regardless of whether his reputation was good or bad, it was enough for the Guanzhong torture room to gain face. Even if they were all Wei Jiuduan's men, this didn't prevent them from having a good impression of Chu Xiu. From this, it could be seen how bad Wei Jiuduan's methods were. In the entire Guanxi branch, there was almost no one who truly stood on Wei Jiuduan's side. Even his adopted son, Yang Ling, had some complaints about him. Since ancient times, the way to control subordinates relied on nothing more than two things. One was a strong personal charisma, just like the previous hall master Chu Kuanga, who was respected by all the warriors in the pugilistic world. The other was benefits. If you brought benefits to your subordinates, they would risk their lives for you. The more benefits you could give to your subordinates, the more they would risk their lives for you. This was because they were afraid that one day, someone who could risk his life even more than them would come and replace their position. This was what Chu Xiu was currently using. He firmly believed that a relationship maintained by benefits was more reliable than the so-called familial and brotherly love. Just like now, Chu Xiu's subordinates, Du Guangzhong, and the group from the Blue Dragon Society. Both sides were competing with each other, afraid that they would be pulled apart by the other and then abandoned by Chu Xiu. Chapter 329. In the main hall of the Guanxi branch, Chu Xiu entered with his men. Aside from Wei Jiuduan sitting in the middle with Yang Ling standing behind him, there was also the Wei family's ancestor and a few Wei family disciples. The Wei family's head, Wei Mok, wasn't here. The Wei family was such a large family, so there had to be someone guarding it. When he saw Chu Xiu walk in with his men, the Wei family's ancestor subconsciously looked at Chu Xiu. He was very curious about Chu Xiu. For an old man like the Wei family's ancestor who had lived for more than 100 years, he had seen many young talents, but there weren't many who could do what Chu Xiu did. Being born in a sect and being born in the wilderness were two completely different types of treatment. The former was easy, but the latter was difficult. It was extremely difficult for Chu Xiu to reach his current position by relying on his humble background. However, the Wei family's ancestor already knew what kind of person Chu Xiu was just by looking at his face. This person's eyes were sinister, but he could still look straight at his superior, Wei Jiuduan. It could be imagined that Chu Xiu didn't have the slightest bit of respect for Wei Jiuduan. He was a person with wild ambitions. However, the Wei family's ancestor didn't mind. Rules were rules. As long as Chu Xiu wanted to stay in the Guanzhong torture room, he had to abide by these rules. How could he, Chu Xiu, dare to kill Wei Zheduan? In the main hall, when Wei Zheduan saw Chu Xiu arrive, he said indifferently, "You're here? Have a seat." Chu Xiu cupped his hands perfunctorily and sat down with his men. His attitude immediately made Wei Zheduan even angrier. With a cold snort, Wei Zheduan said, "Chu Xiu, you should know why I called you here today. I have so many inspectors under me, but you're the most courageous one. You're the Jian province's inspector. Who gave you the authority to arrest people in the Qin province? Who?" Wei Zheduan slammed the table and shouted angrily. His aggressive manner made it seem like he wanted to swallow Chu Xiu alive. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Is Sir Wei very angry? I arrested people from the Zhou and Wei family, not your people. Are you prepared to fall out with me for an outsider?" Before Wei Zheduan could speak, the Wei family stood up and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, the Wei family didn't plan to be your enemy. The Guanzhong torture room and the local powers of the Guanzhong have never been opposing each other. The Guanzhong torture hall is the fish, and the Wulin factions of Guanzhong are the water. Neither side can do without the other, but you insist on taking things to the extreme, forcing the Wei family to act. The Wei family has been around for 1,000 years. Before the Guanzhong torture room was built, the Wei family was already in the Guanzhong area. You, an inspector, want to control the Wei family? You're delusional. You've crossed borders and captured a disciple of the Wei family. That's against the rules of the Guanzhong torture room. Hand over the person, and we'll forget about this for now. Otherwise, Sir Wei will get justice for the Wei family." Wei Zheduan also said coldly, "Chu Xiu, I told you to hand over the person. Did you bring him? Do you know the consequences of disobeying orders? Don't think that you can ignore the higher-ups just because you've made some contributions to the Guanzhong torture room. If I take down one of your provinces, even Hallmaster Guan won't be able to say anything if he finds out." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Since Sir Wei has spoken, I'll give you face. I've already brought the person." Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Wei Zheduan and the Wei family's ancestor looked at each other, their eyes revealing a trace of smugness. Their guess was right. Compared to disobeying orders, this Chu Xiu could be considered to be sensible. Handing over the person and taking a step back would at least protect the province under his control. This way, it would be more practical. After a while, Fire's slave carried a person into the hall and closed the door at the same time. However, neither Wei Zheduan nor the Wei family's ancestor noticed the Fire slave's action of closing the door. Their gazes were all focused on Wei Qin. The current Wei Qin was simply miserable to the extreme. His cultivation had already been crippled, his dantian destroyed, and the tendons in his hands and feet had all been completely crushed. He hadn't used a sword to cut them, but had forcibly crushed them with his bare hands. Such a ruthless method had completely crippled Wei Qin. Moreover, it wasn't just his martial arts that were crippled, but his entire person. He would probably be bedridden for the rest of his life. Seeing Wei Chen's appearance, the Wei family's ancestor's expression was already extremely gloomy. What was the use of bringing such a cripple back to the Wei family? Would he be ridiculed by others? How was Chu Xiu making a concession? This was clearly a provocation. Wei Zheduan was currently in a violent rage. He had asked Chu Xiu to bring Wei Qin over, but in the end, Chu Xiu had brought a cripple over. This was clearly a deliberate provocation of his dignity. Wei Zheduan had just stood up and was about to scold Chu Xiu when Chu Xiu stood up first and said coldly, "Lord Wei, have you slammed the table enough? Slamming the table doesn't mean that the person's words are effective. You are someone who is about to retire, so why do you still want to meddle in these matters? Wouldn't it be better to obediently endure until you retire, then find a place to withdraw from the pugilistic world and retire? The Wei family has given you a lot of elixirs and pills, as expected of the Guanxi great family with 1,000 years of history. But Lord Wei, although some things are never too much, you should be prepared to spend them even if you have the life to earn them." Hearing this, the words that Wei Zheduan had wanted to say were immediately swallowed back down. A wave of cold air instantly rushed to his head. How did Chu Xiu know that the Wei family had given him things? By guessing? But even if it was a guess, how did Chu Xiu know that the Wei family had given him elixirs and pills? Someone had leaked the secret. Only a few of Wei Zheduan's confidants knew about this. Who was it that had informed Chu Xiu beforehand? Thinking of this, Wei Zheduan felt that something was wrong. If someone had really leaked the secret to Chu Xiu, why would Chu Xiu still appear here? Purposely walking into a trap. But without waiting for Wei Zheduan to think further, behind him, Ong Ling, who had always been very low-key, suddenly had an ominous glint in his eyes. All the vital energy in his body had been poured into a 9-inch long steel needle, which he stabbed towards Wei Zheduan's back. The steel needle in Yang Ling's hand was Tang Ye's hidden weapon, the life-seizing bone needle. But originally, there was no poison on it, but Chu Xiu was afraid that it was not safe, so he had Ghost Hand King mix some highly toxic substances and smear it on the steel needle. A small steel needle could not take Wei Zheduan's life, but Chu Xiu could. Wei Zheduan had never thought that Yang Ling, who he had thought was the most loyal to him, would actually secretly attack him from behind. Moreover, it was a fatal attack. It was unknown what the steel needle was made of, but it was incomparably strong. It directly tore apart Wei Zheduan's protective vital energy, and stabbed towards his back. Only at this time did Wei Zheduan really react. Under the stimulation of killing intent, his whole body exploded with a strong gang qi. With a loud bang, Yang Ling was directly hit by the gang qi and flew out while vomiting blood. And the steel needle had just barely left a bloody mark on Wei Zheduan's arm. Although Yang Ling vomited blood because of this move, the corner of his mouth bloomed with a trace of a smile, because his mission had been completed at this time. The poison on the steel needle was not considered strong. After all, Ghost Hand King was not a poison expert like the 5 Poison sect, but this poison still had some effect on Wei Zheduan. But at this time, Chu Xiu had already made his move. At the moment when Yang Ling made his move, Chu Xiu gathered his essence, qi, and spirit. His mental energy revolved to the extreme, and the heaven's sun gazing at air technique was displayed. At this time, Chu Xiu's eyes were even slightly white, and there was not a trace of black in his eyes. He was like a ghost god, and looked extremely terrifying. Chu Xiu had been in seclusion for so many days. Although he was not able to advance the heaven's sun gazing at air technique to another realm, he had comprehended some of the uses of the heaven's sun gazing at air technique. For example, at this time, he used all his mental energy on the heaven's sun gazing at air technique. At this time, the line that represented Wei Zheduan's power was constantly dancing, but it was extremely slow, as if it was in slow motion. This was not because Wei Zheduan's speed was slow, but because Chu Xiu's eyes were too fast. By using all his mental energy on the heaven's sun gazing at air technique, Chu Xiu even entered a subtle realm when he saw the opponent's loophole. Although he still could not predict the real change of the 3, or calculate the cause and effect of heaven's secrets, it allowed Chu Xiu to have a deeper understanding of the loophole. There was only one chance. From Yang Ling's move to Chu Xiu's move, both sides seemed to have practiced it countless times. It was simply seamless, and the timing was not different for a moment. The Heaven's Demon Dance in Chu Xiu's hand had already been unsheathed. At this time, all the spiritual energy in his body condensed on the blade, causing the originally black blade to become dark red, as if it was cast with blood. At the same time, the power of qi and blood flowed into the Heaven's Demon Dance, and the devil weapon, the Heaven's Demon Dance, seemed to feel Chu Xiu's mood. After absorbing Chu Xiu's power of qi and blood, its aura had become extremely fierce and evil. It was definitely a devil weapon among devil weapons. Staring closely at the lines that represented Wei Zheduan, he found the weakest one. When Chu Xiu's blade fell, it was strangely silent. A bloody light flashed, and the surging devil qi had just erupted. Wei Zheduan's face still had the disbelief of being sneak attacked by his adopted son. On the other side, the Wei family's ancestor seemed to have just reacted, and his hand had just grasped the hilt of his sword. In such a short moment, Chu Xiu's ultimate blade easily tore apart Wei Zheduan's protective aura, and it fell from an unimaginable angle. Blood splattered, and Wei Zheduan's head directly flew into the sky, and blood splattered on the ground. Chu Xiu's eyes returned to normal, and the hand that was holding the heaven's demon dance trembled slightly. This blade not only consumed Chu Xiu's spiritual energy and power of qi and blood, but most importantly, it almost drained his spiritual energy. From the moment Yang Ling made his move, Chu Xiu used the heaven's sun-gazing at air to the extreme. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to cooperate with Yang Ling so tacitly. This kind of thing could not be practiced in advance. Fortunately, Yang Ling's attack was decisive, and Chu Xiu also seized this opportunity. The two of them cooperated and actually beheaded Wei Zheduan with one blade. Although Wei Zheduan was only an old man at the unity of heaven and man realm, no matter how old he was still at the unity of heaven and man realm. If Chu Xiu's matter was placed in the pugilistic world, it could almost be called a miracle. Chapter 330. As Wei Zheduan's head fell to the ground, the people present were still unable to react. Before the Wei family's great ancestor could even draw his sword, Wei Zheduan was already dead in front of him. This made him immediately widen his eyes, his face full of disbelief. It was true that Chu Xiu was strong, and it was also true that he also had a record of killing people in the unity of heaven and man realm. Moreover, Chu Xiu was in the three-flower realm before, but now Chu Xiu had already stepped into the five qis collecting in mind realm. However, what was the situation when Chu Xiu killed Feng Wuling last time? It was a fight to the death with almost all his strength, but now Chu Xiu only used a knife to cut off Wei Zheduan's head. Was Chu Xiu too strong, or was Wei Zheduan, a great expert in the unity of heaven and man realm, so old that he could no longer fight? They could not see exactly what kind of power and price Chu Xiu had paid to kill Wei Zheduan. Even though it had only been a short instant, the amount of power and energy Chu Xiu had expended was even more than what he had expended in the 15 minutes he had spent fighting with others. Smiling at the Wei family's great ancestor and the others, Chu Xiu shouted, "The people of the Wei family killed Lord Wei Zheduan and despised the laws of the Guanzhong torture room. Their crimes are punishable by death. None of them can escape." The door was opened, and the people in the Guanxi branch rushed into the lobby when they heard the sound. They were stunned when they saw Wei Zheduan's body on the ground, not knowing what had happened. At this time, Yang Ling, who had been beaten by Wei Zheduan to the point of vomiting blood, stood up, pointed at the Wei family's great ancestor and the others, and shouted, "Attack! They killed my adoptive father." Everyone in the Guanxi area knew that Chu Xiu and Wei Zheduan did not get along, so they did not believe what Chu Xiu said. However, Yang Ling was different. Everyone in Guanxi knew that Yang Ling was Wei Zheduan's godson and Wei Zheduan's confidant. The credibility of his words was much higher than that of Chu Xiu. Moreover, now that Wei Zheduan was dead, they subconsciously chose to listen to Yang Ling and attacked the Wei family together. Chu Xiu recovered his Jin Qi, and the heavenly demon dance brought with it a sinister bloodlight and devil Qi as it slashed towards the Wei family old ancestor. There was a hidden killing intent in the blade momentum. Wei clan's old ancestor's sword descended, and the icy soul-cold light slashed out, blocking Chu Xiu's blade. He roared, "Chu Xiu was the one who killed him. You've all been deceived." Even though the Wei family patriarch was shouting, no one was listening to him. One was an outsider, and the other was a hero of Guanzhong torture room, a person who was the face of Guanzhong torture room. Was there a need to say more about whom they would choose to believe? The most important thing was that Yang Ling was here. Even if they did not believe in Chu Xiu, they had to believe in Yang Ling. This was also why Chu Xiu said that Yang Ling was the most important part of his plan. Stepping into the five qis collecting in the origin realm, Chu Xiu was actually confident that he could kill Wei Zheduan head-on. Wei Zheduan's strength was not too strong, and he was now old. According to Chu Xiu's investigation, Wei Zheduan had almost never really fought in the past few years. His qi and blood were already very serious. If it was not for the fact that there were no suitable candidates in Guanzhong torture room, he was afraid that he would have already retired. Chu Xiu had now stepped into the 5 cheese collecting in the origin realm. If they fought face to face, even if Wei Zheduan did not have any loopholes, Chu Xiu could still force a loophole out of him. However, how long would it take to kill Wei Zheduan in a head-on battle? This was something that even Chu Xiu himself could not say for sure. A skinny camel was still bigger than a horse. Although Wei Zheduan was old, no matter how old he was still in the unity of heaven and man realm. God knew what other trump cards he had. When the time came, the whole city would know about it. Even if Chu Xiu had done so many meritorious deeds for Guanzhong torture room, and even if he had a great reputation, he would not be able to get away with it. Therefore, Chu Xiu chose to let Yang Ling launch a sneak attack while he cooperated with Yang Ling. With the power of the heaven's sun gazing at air technique, he seized the opportunity that Yang Ling had created for him and finally killed Wei Zheduan with one slash. Just like what Yang Ling had said, this time, Chu Xiu was not 100% confident. If Yang Ling's strength was not enough and he did not injure Wei Zheduan, if Wei Zheduan's strength was beyond his imagination, and he did not reveal any loopholes after being sneak attacked by his own people, then Chu Xiu would not be able to kill him. However, there were no ifs in this world. Wei Zheduan was dead, and Chu Xiu was still alive. This proved that his gamble this time was correct. Seeing that the Wei family patriarch was still shouting, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Stop shouting. No one here will believe your Wei family. So what if your Wei family has a long history? People have to look at the present and not live in history. If I say that you killed Wei Zheduan, then you killed Wei Zheduan." A hint of coldness and regret flashed in the Wei family patriarch's eyes. At this moment, he was really regretful. However, he did not regret making an enemy out of Chu Xiu. He regretted that he did not completely consign Chu Xiu to eternal damnation. In the Wei family patriarch's view, this Chu Xiu was simply a complete lunatic. The Wei family patriarch never would have thought that Chu Xiu actually dared to kill Wei Zheduan in public. It was insubordination, and it was so ruthless. It was no longer important when Yang Ling was bribed by Chu Xiu. What was important was that Chu Xiu actually had the guts to kill Wei Zheduan a long time ago. Could it be that he, Chu Xiu, was not afraid of the Guanzhong torture room's punishment? Dealing with an enemy like Chu Xiu, either he did not make a move, or he made a move to kill. Otherwise, there would be no end of trouble. The Wei family patriarch gnashed his teeth in hatred and said, "Chu Xiu, I underestimated you this time. You're simply a lunatic. I only miscalculated one thing, and that was that I did not expect my Wei family to be going against a lunatic. However, you won't be able to be arrogant for long. Killing a colleague is a serious crime, and insubordination is an even more serious crime. No matter how great your reputation in the Guanzhong torture room is, this reputation will not be able to protect you. I want to see if you, Chu Xiu, can survive this time." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Whether I can survive this time, I'm afraid you won't be able to see it." As his voice fell, Chu Xiu's hand formed a fist seal. When the seal fell, Gang Qi seemed to transform into a large net, covering all directions. Heaven and earth were useless. Under the wisdom fist seal, the Wei family patriarch's body was imprisoned. He wanted to break free, but he was shocked to find that the strength of Chu Xiu's vital qi was not inferior to his at all. The unity of heaven and man realm was a level stronger than the 5 qis collecting in the origin realm. Furthermore, he had been in this realm for so many years, while Chu Xiu had just stepped into the 5 qis collecting in the origin realm. Where did his vital qi cultivation come from? The demonic dance slashed down, and the power of the Avicii demonic blade was displayed to the extreme by Chu Xiu. The surging demonic qi and vital qi merged, and the power that erupted made the Wei family patriarch fearful, and he could only bitterly resist. Right now, Chu Xiu had the intention to kill the Wei family patriarch. It should be said that from the moment he prepared to kill Wei Zheduan, the Wei family had to be destroyed. If the Wei family was not destroyed, where could he find a scapegoat? Where could he find an excuse? In the past, when he faced Feng Wulong, Chu Xiu felt a great deal of pressure. He could only use the heaven's sun gazing at air as a gambling method to fight with his life on the line. In the end, he won the gamble, and Feng Wuling died. But now, when he faced the Wei family patriarch, Chu Xiu did not feel any pressure. There were 3 reasons. The first was that Chu Xiu had stepped into the 5 qis collecting in the origin realm, and his body was no longer the same as before. The second was his background. It was very difficult for a rogue cultivator to reach a high position. This difficulty was not only reflected in the lack of cultivation resources and the guidance of a famous teacher, but also in the cultivation technique. Those who could rely on an ordinary cultivation technique to achieve success were in the minority. Obviously, the Wei family patriarch was not one of them. Compared to Feng Wuling's maiden swordplay, his cultivation technique was on a different level. As for the third reason, it was because the Wei family patriarch's state of mind was different. He was a person who was afraid of death. Even if he was invincible in the world, he could not escape the pressure of time. Everyone in the pugilistic world would die one day, and the decline of one's qi and blood was inevitable. Those who could see through this naturally did not matter. In some large sects, those seemingly old people were actually the most terrifying. This was because they knew that they were not far from death, so they dared to use the last of their strength to fight for their sect. The power of extreme sublimation was very terrifying. However, those who could not see through this, were afraid of death, and always held back when they attacked. They did not dare to fight with their lives on the line, and such people were more likely to die. The Wei family patriarch was such a person. Back when he was at his peak, he only felt that his qi and blood were declining a little, so he began to cultivate in seclusion, hoping to slow down his aging. One could imagine how afraid he was of death. At this time, Chu Xiu had already made up his mind to kill, but the Wei family patriarch still did not fight with his life on the line. He only wanted to expose the fact that Chu Xiu had killed Wei Jiuduan, so that the Guanzhong torture room could punish Chu Xiu. With this kind of state of mind, the Wei family patriarch was forced to the extreme by Chu Xiu's Avici demon blade. As a warrior at the unity of heaven and man realm, he was actually suppressed by Chu Xiu to the point where even counterattacking was a luxury. During the battle, the Avici demon blade in Chu Xiu's hand was evil and ruthless. At the same time, he would occasionally use the heaven's sun gazing at air to see if he could find any loopholes in the Wei family patriarch's defense. However, he had used up too much of his energy just now, so he could not use the heaven's sun gazing at air for a long time. However, it did not matter. Although the Wei family patriarch did not have any big loopholes when he attacked, it was impossible for him to make every move perfect. Once Chu Xiu found a small loophole, Chu Xiu would definitely attack wildly, almost injuring the Wei family patriarch. At this time, the other people of the Wei family were also very miserable. This time, the Wei family patriarch thought that the matter was in the bag, so he did not bring too many people. There were only a few disciples of the Wei family, most of whom were in the physical invulnerability or inner invulnerability realm. There were only 2 warriors at the 3-flower realm. However, on Chu Xiu's side, Tangya, Yan Bugui, and the others were all here. In addition, the warriors from the Guanxi branch under Wei Jiuduan were also here. Under the combined attack of these people, several people from the Wei family had already been killed. The people under Wei Jiuduan did not kill. The ones who killed were Chu Xiu's people. Seeing this scene, the Wei family patriarch began to panic. It seemed that Chu Xiu really did not intend to let him leave alive today. Chapter 331. Not shedding a tear until you see the coffin. This phrase perfectly described the mentality of some people, such as the Wei family's ancestor. Just now, if the Wei family's ancestor had intended to escape from the beginning, Chu Xiu would not have been able to catch up with a warrior of the unity of heaven and man realm. But now that both sides had fought for so long, the Wei family's people were almost all dead, and the Wei family's ancestor himself had consumed a lot of true qi. It was already too late for him to think of escaping now. The Wei family's ancestor swung the sword in his hand, and in an instant, a wave of icy blue gang qi rippled out, drawing the heaven and earth, causing an extremely cold force to seep into the Gang Qi ripple and rush towards Chu Xiu. The cold air lingered around his body, and the Wei family's ancestor also wanted to take this opportunity to escape. Other than Chu Xiu, no one dared to fight head-on against an expert of the unity of heaven and man realm, even Tang Ye and Yan Bugui. Facing the Wei family's ancestor, they had no choice but to make way. If they tried to forcefully resist, it would only be courting death. But at this moment, Chu Xiu formed a seal with both hands, and in an instant, a supreme light bloomed. The perfect Aquarius seal, fulfilling a lifetime's wish. There was a loud explosion, and the cold Gang Qi was extinguished. Chu Xiu's hand formed the inner binding seal, and his figure appeared in front of the Wei family's ancestor almost in an instant. A knife slashed down, and there was a trace of strange divinity in the Avicii demon blade, making it even more evil. In his shock, the Wei clan ancestor slashed out with his sword. The sword's edge drew in the heaven and earth, and stellar energy surged towards Chu Xiu's saber like an ice storm. However, it was directly shattered by the violent demonic saber. Even the Wei family's fifth revolution treasure weapon in the Wei family's ancestor's hand showed traces of cracks, and finally with a loud bang, it directly shattered. Chu Xiu's eyes were filled with murderous intent, forgetting the world of mortals, having no worries, and a state of selflessness. The Wei ancestor hadn't fought for more than a decade, and the sword in his hand hadn't been stained with blood for more than a decade. It didn't have the baleful aura of a weapon, and he himself didn't have any killing intent or battle intent. Chu Xiu, on the other hand, had slaughtered countless people along the way. He had experienced countless life and death battles. In that instant, his killing intent surged to the heavens, causing the Wei family ancestor's heart to tremble. This was the first time he had felt fear towards Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu were to use the heaven's sun gazing at air now, he would probably be able to see many flaws in the Wei family's patriarch. However, now that Chu Xiu had stepped into the selfless killing realm, his mind was filled with killing intent and battle intent. In his current state, he was unable to display a martial art like the heaven's sun gazing at air. However, it didn't matter now. Against the Wei family's ancestor, he could clearly kill him head-on. Why would he need to find a loophole to launch a sneak attack? As the fist fell, boundless killing intent surged. The powerful killing intent seemed to condense into a solid substance, dyeing everything around it crimson red as it charged towards the Wei family's patriarch. The annihilation fist of heaven and earth. In the great yin and yang sorrowful poem of Heaven and Earth, very few people in the Jianghu could recognize most of the martial arts. For example, Chu Xiu's great primordial chaos technique of heaven and earth. As long as Chu Xiu didn't say anything about it, no one would be able to recognize it. However, the annihilation fist of heaven and earth was very famous. There were many experts in the Eastern Qi military who knew this fist technique. It condensed killing intent to the limit, and even before the fist fell, the killing intent could already tear people apart. The Wei family's patriarch also recognized the annihilation fist of heaven and earth. At that critical moment, all the stellar energy in his body gathered in his right arm. He pointed out with his sword finger, and the surrounding stellar energy condensed into ice. However, he continued to point out with his second finger. The power of the ice stacked together, but it didn't explode. Instead, it was hidden within, and its power multiplied. In an instant, the Wei family's patriarch pointed out 9 sword fingers in a row. The power of the 9 sword fingers overlapped, like an iceberg. In that instant, the Wei family's patriarch's face was frighteningly pale. This was the Wei family's 9-layered cold mountain sword. It could be said to be the Wei family's trump card. In fact, when the Wei family's patriarch was young, he had used this sword technique to make a name for himself. When he was at his peak, he could indeed explode with the absolute power of the 9-layered cold mountain sword. However, after using this technique, the Wei family's patriarch felt that he had exhausted himself to the limit. The killing intent of the annihilation fist came crashing down. The powerful power could suppress everything. The 9 layers of power of the 9-layered cold mountain sword exploded with a loud bang. The powerful stellar energy rushed through Chu Xiu's internal organs and meridians, causing Chu Xiu's face to turn pale in an instant. However, it was soon followed by a hint of red. However, even so, Chu Xiu still didn't retreat. Under the state of the Annihilation Fist, even if Chu Xiu maintained his rationality, it was inevitable that he would be affected by this powerful killing intent. He swore not to rest until he killed his opponent. He didn't even use the internal lion's seal to suppress himself. Chu Xiu directly used the power of the Annihilation Fist to meet the 9-layered Cold Mountain sword head-on. With a loud bang, the ice completely shattered. However, Chu Xiu's right arm had already been cut by the ice and was dripping with blood. However, these were only external injuries. Chu Xiu didn't even care. The fist landed, and the perfect Aquarius seal burst out. The blinding light shone down, and within the dazzling light, there was a ferocious killing intent. The Wei family patriarch did his best to resist, but he was still blasted by the seal until his blood boiled, and his figure fell back. Chu Xiu turned around and formed the Great Vajra seal. The powerful fist landed with a loud bang. They collided again, and there was a loud explosion. Right now, Chu Xiu's state could be said to be strange. He was like a robot, smashing down one after another with the Great Vajra seal. He was completely competing with the Wei family patriarch in stamina, primeval qi, and willpower. Although Chu Xiu was a realm lower than the Wei family patriarch, he had the glazed golden thread gu, and his cultivation methods that were not inferior to the top sections. His accumulation was not inferior to the Wei family patriarch. After more than 10 moves, the Wei family patriarch was already vomiting blood from the impact. He couldn't hold on any longer. In such an intense battle, no one could retreat. It was either kill the opponent or be killed themselves. Wei family patriarch felt fear in his heart. He wanted to retreat, but retreating meant death. Just as the Wei family patriarch's attacks were gradually slowing down and he had the intention to retreat, Chu Xiu formed seals with both hands. It was an incomparably complex seal. In an instant, the 5-colored light in Chu Xiu's hands shone brightly, and the power of the 5 elements burst out. They connected head to tail, mutually reinforcing and restraining each other, and smashed down like a great sun will seal. Sun will seal. Chu Xiu had used this seal technique before, but he had barely managed to do it. He hadn't unleashed its full might. The true power of the sun will seal should be at the 5 qi unification stage. The power of the 5 elements in the body had reached a balance, and the 5 elements had fused into one. Only then could the true power of the sun will seal be unleashed. The power of the 5 elements burst out, the 5 powers mutually reinforced and restrained each other, and the superimposed power was not as simple as adding them together. Under the sun will seal, the meridians in the Wei family patriarch's body shattered, and he vomited blood as he was sent flying. But immediately after, a black light appeared beside him. Heavenly demonic dance slashed across the Wei family patriarch's neck, causing blood to splatter. The Wei family patriarch's head was already in Chu Xiu's hands. The surrounding Guanxi branch martial artists were all stunned, including Chu Xiu's subordinates. Although they knew that Chu Xiu had killed a one with the world expert, that was only hearsay. Now that they had seen it with their own eyes, the shock they felt was incomparable to hearsay. Holding the Wei family patriarch's head, Chu Xiu popped a healing pill into his mouth, recovering his injuries and restoring his true qi. To be honest, Chu Xiu did not feel the slightest pressure in the battle with the Wei family patriarch. The feeling the opponent gave Chu Xiu was not even as strong as the leader of the River East's 5 heroes, Qing Buji. The reason for this was very simple: the Wei family patriarch was afraid of death. Even though Chu Xiu had killed the Wei family patriarch in the end, until the last moment of his life, the Wei family patriarch did not choose to burn his blood essence to fight to the death. After all, for a martial artist of his age, his qi and blood had already faded. Burning his blood essence was equivalent to burning his lifespan. It was a pity that even if he did not fight to the death, Chu Xiu would fight to the death. The Wei family patriarch fantasized that he could escape unscathed and watch Chu Xiu suffer. In the end, the blood essence that he did not burn was scattered all over the ground. Looking at the people around him, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "The Wei family killed Lord Wei Zheduan and looked down on the Guangzhong torture room's rules. They are traitors. Now that the Wei family patriarch has been executed, the rest of you, follow me to the Wei family and wipe them out completely." Yang Ling followed behind Chu Xiu and shouted, "Follow official Chu and kill the Wei family." In terms of strength and status, Yang Ling was naturally inferior to Chu Xiu. However, his identity as Wei Zheduan's adopted son was very useful at this time. With Wei Zheduan's death, he was naturally seen as Wei Zheduan's successor by the other martial artists. At least in the eyes of these martial artists from the Guanxi branch, Yang Ling's words were more effective than Chu Xiu's. The crowd surged out of the courtyard. Chu Xiu called Du Guangzhong and the others over and transmitted his voice in a low voice, "You guys don't have to go to destroy the Wei family." Du Guangzhong immediately panicked. Destroying the Wei family was a great merit. What did official Chu mean by this? He did not want them to achieve any merit. Was he prepared to abandon them? Seeing Du Guangzhong's hesitant expression, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Don't think too much. I have other things for you to do. You have seen Wei Zheduan's corpse. Bring Qin Fang, Lu Qingli, and the others to deal with it. You are all professionals. You should be able to deal with it to the extent that others can't see through it. If you really can't, then destroy the corpse. It doesn't matter." Chu Xiu had framed the Wei family for killing Wei Zheduan. If this matter was spread to the outside world, no one would believe it. Chu Xiu did not expect them to believe it either. It would be fine as long as a small number of people chose to believe it. Now, Chu Xiu was dealing with Wei Zheduan's corpse not to deceive others, but to have a reasonable explanation. At the very least, he could save face. Chapter 332. In the Nine Plains Wei family, the family head, Wei Mok, felt a little uneasy. However, he believed that there shouldn't be any changes to the situation. Wei Zheduan definitely wanted to suppress Chu Xiu. With his status as the disciplinary officer, Wei Mok couldn't think of any way for Chu Xiu to break out of this predicament. Moreover, it would be useless even if they tried to use force. They were two experts at the oneness of heaven and man realm. Who in the Guanxi region could defeat them? However, at this moment, an intense battle cry came from outside the Wei family's manor. Wei Mok stood up abruptly, pushed the door open, and shouted, "What's going on? Who dares to behave atrociously in my Wei family?" At this time, a Wei family disciple ran over with a panicked expression and shouted, "Family head. Not good. Chu Xiu brought his men to attack our Wei clan and even said that the old ancestor killed Wei Zheduan and has been executed. Our Wei clan despises the laws of the Guangzhong torture room and wants to destroy our Wei clan." Wei Mok's figure swayed as he shouted, "Impossible." He knew what the Wei clan's ancestor had gone to do. Why would the ancestor kill Wei Zheduan for no reason? This was definitely a conspiracy. That Wei family disciple said miserably, "Family head, I know it's impossible, but Chu Xiu has already fought his way in. They didn't even give us a chance to explain ourselves." Wei Mok hurriedly ran to the front yard. The people of the Wei clan had already been forced to retreat step by step under the blades of the Guangzhong torture room martial artists. There was basically no room for them to retaliate. If all the Wulin forces in the entire Guanxi area united, they would indeed be more powerful than the Guanxi branch. However, if they were to face a force alone, the power of the Guangzhong torture room would be overwhelming. Wei Mok's eyes turned red when he saw this scene. The Wei family had never lost so many people in the Jianghu for so many years. These were the future hopes of the Wei family. Wei Mok shouted, "Stop! Chu Xiu, what do you mean by this? You said that my Wei family's ancestor killed Wei Zheduan, but where is the evidence? No matter what, the Wei family is a big family in Guanxi, yet you want to destroy us just like that? Where are the laws and regulations of the Guangzhong torture room? What about the rules? Also, you're just an inspector of the Jian province. What right do you have to bring people to attack my Wei family? What Chu Xiu was doing now was actually unreasonable according to the rules, but it didn't matter. Chu Xiu was here to kill people, so why would he care about whether it was reasonable or not? Therefore, in the face of Wei Mok's question, Chu Xiu only sneered coldly. Without saying a word, he charged forward with his saber. In the past, when Chu Xiu was at the Three-Flower Realm, he had fought with Wei Mok. Wei Mok's strength was considered mediocre even among the Five Qis origin realm martial artists. After all, the Wei family had been in a corner of Guanxi for a long time. Although Wei Mok was the family master, he basically didn't fight. Even if he did, it wasn't a battle of life and death. In addition, the Wei family's inherited martial arts were weak, which led to the opponent's combat strength being very low. At least, it was much lower than the five heroes of Jiangdong. Not to mention Qingbuji, Wei Mok couldn't even compare to LV Tong and Dong Xianyi. After all, these people were often in the Jianghu and had almost never stopped fighting. At this moment, when Chu Xiu slashed with his saber, the Avici demonic chi was fused with the blood-refined divine aura. In addition, Chu Xiu had directly stepped into the selfless killing realm. His killing intent was also condensed in this saber. This could be said to be extremely evil, and it directly caused Wei Mok's expression to change drastically. The ice sword on the long sword in his hand was condensed to the extreme. He even directly burned his chi and blood and spat out a mouthful of blood, causing the ice blue sword to be mixed with a trace of blood red. Wei Mok's attack was much more decisive than the Wei family's old ancestor. When he saw that the situation was not good, he immediately burned his chi and blood. Unfortunately, he didn't have the Wei family's old ancestor's strength. In front of Chu Xiu, it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. As the saber fell, Wei Mok's sword shattered, and the long sword in his hand also shattered. Wei Mok's entire body was slashed by this saber, and he vomited blood and was sent flying. Chu Xiu's hand formed the inner binding seal, and his figure was like a black light. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in front of Wei Mok. The surging demonic chi that contained the evil divinity slashed down, and this time, Wei Mok's entire body was directly cut into two. With Wei Mok's current strength, he didn't even have the qualifications to withstand Chu Xiu's complete 3 blades of Avici. Wei Mok's corpse fell, and the blood mist in the air didn't dissipate. This caused the Wei family members to be stunned for a moment, and then they immediately dispersed. Previously, the Wei family members didn't disperse, and they still had the courage to resist, because they had a patriarch like Wei Mok. But now, they saw their patriarch being killed by Chu Xiu in 2 slashes. This could be said to be extremely powerful, and they instantly collapsed and started to flee. There was no need for Chu Xiu to go personally, the others could do it. Chu Xiu said to Ghost Hand Monarch, "Search the Wei family." These years, the Wei family has violated the rules of the Guangzhong torture room many times. These are all evidence. Gather the other financial and cultivation resources, and distribute them after the matter is over. Ghost Hand Monarch nodded with a smile. He was very good at this kind of thing. "Right, Lord, what should we do with Wei Changling?" Ghost Hand Monarch suddenly remembered this person. Although he was a member of the Wei family, he was also the inspector of the Guangzhong torture room. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "The Wei family is rebelling. As a member of the Wei family, how can Wei Changling be anything good? He is a spy who infiltrated the Guangzhong torture room. Of course, he has to be killed." Ghost Hand Monarch nodded. At this time, Tangya heard this and suddenly said, "Lord, you don't have to do anything about this. Leave it to me and Yen Bugui. Last time, we let this old man escape. This time, he won't be able to escape." Chu Xiu nodded, and suddenly asked, "Have you touched the threshold of the Three-Flower Realm?" Tangya nodded and said, "Last time when I fought with Wei Changling, I sensed it. After all, I have been an assassin for so many years. Just relying on seclusion to gain enlightenment is not as fast as fighting to the death. These two people's performance in the Heavenly Sin Division had been outstanding. If there were no accidents, they could even rise to the Blue Dragon Society headquarters in the future. It was not strange that they had entered the Three-Flower Realm now. After the Wei family was defeated, they were basically at the mercy of Chu Xiu and the others. However, the Wei family had so many martial artists, and Chu Xiu could not kill them all. Some martial artists who had escaped from the Wei family remembered that the Wei family still had Wei Changling, so they went to the Spirit State Prefecture to inform Wei Changling. At this time, Wei Changling was still recovering in the hall. Last time, he had suffered greatly at the hands of Tang Ye and Yan Bugui, and his injuries had not yet healed. When he received the news of the Wei family's destruction, Wei Changling's first reaction was disbelief, and his second reaction was terror. The Wei family was destroyed, and his greatest support was destroyed. Wei Zheduan, who could suppress Chu Xiu and Guanxi, was also dead. Wouldn't Chu Xiu be able to crush him as easily as crushing an ant? As for whether Chu Xiu would be punished by the Guanzhong torture room in the future, Wei Changling did not even dare to think about it. In his view, Chu Xiu had already gone crazy. He dared to kill anyone, and wanted to kill anyone. His forefather and Wei Zheduan were both dead. Was he still missing? So when he received the news, Wei Changling immediately prepared to flee. But when he stepped out of the hall, he was met by Tang Ye, Yan Bugui, and a group of martial artists under Chu Xiu's command. Before Wei Changling could speak, Tang Ye said with a smile, "Official Wei, we have come to send you on your way." As he finished, Tang Ye and Yan Bugui attacked together. As for the others, they were only responsible for watching Wei Changling's subordinates. In reality, even if no one was watching, Wei Changling's subordinates would not dare to attack. How many days had it been since Wei Changling became the inspector? These people were the subordinates of the previous inspector, Kai Jingsheng. They had no loyalty to Wei Changling. Also, as Chu Xiu attacked, all of Guanxi was in an uproar. Ordinary Jianghu constables like them did not dare to participate. Tang Ye and Yan Bugui did not take long to kill Wei Changling. Last time, the two of them had worked together to seriously injure Wei Changling. This time, Wei Changling had not recovered from his injuries, and he was afraid. His combat power was not as good as last time. So in less than 15 minutes, Wei Changling was killed in the fight between Tang Ye and Yan Bugui. As Wei Changling died, the Nine Plains Wei family became a part of Guanxi's history. Even if some of the branch family members escaped in 2s and 3s, they probably did not dare to stay in Guangzhong. The events in Guanxi swept through all of Guangzhong like a storm. The news that Chu Xiu released to the outside world was that the Wei family had broken the law, doing all sorts of things that went against the laws of the Guangzhong Disciplinary Hall. Thus, he had been called over by Wei Zheduan for questioning. In the end, the old ancestor of the Wei family had launched a sneak attack on Wei Zheduan in anger, causing Wei Zheduan's death. As for Chu Xiu, in order to avenge his superior, he had risked his life to kill the old ancestor of the Wei family, destroying the Wei family. Chu Xiu had released this news to the outside, and he had sent the same news to the headquarters. But anyone in their right mind would not believe Chu Xiu's words. The Wei family had done these things for a long time. Had Wei Zheduan lost his mind? He was close to retirement before coming to investigate the Wei family. This clearly did not make sense. Also, the Wei family could not have killed Wei Zheduan. Who was Wei Zheduan? He was not a minor character, but the torture officer of the Guangzhong torture room. While he was old and about to retire, he was still one of the upper echelons of the Guangzhong torture room. The Nine Plains Wei family was a large family in Guangzhong. They were famous in all of Guangzhong, much less in Guangzhong. But Guangzhong was the Guangzhong of the Guangzhong torture room. The Wei family dared to kill the Guanxi torture officer in a branch of the Guangzhong torture room? Even if the forefather of the Wei family drank a jar of fake wine, he would not do something like this. Chapter 333. The excuse that Chu Xiu had spread was very clumsy, so clumsy that people did not need to analyze it to guess that this was a fantasy story. People even suspected that it was Chu Xiu who had killed Wei Zheduan. This time, people had spread rumors that Wei Zheduan had allied with the Wei family to suppress Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had a reason to act. However, the only thing people were puzzled about was how Chu Xiu had managed to kill 2 Unity of Heaven experts. His strength should not be abnormal to such a degree, right? In any case, this matter had caused an uproar. Everyone in Guangzhou wanted to see how the main hall would handle the matter of Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu appeared very calm at this time. He was still waiting in the provincial government as though he had not killed them. 3 days later, Yuqi rushed over from the main hall, traveling day and night. Seeing Chu Xiu's limited appearance, Yuqi couldn't help but smile bitterly. Brother Chu, you've caused such a huge commotion, yet you can still sit still? Chu Xiu had someone pour a cup of tea for Yuqi. He said coolly, I have a clear conscience. Why can't I sit still? Yuqi took a step closer and said gravely, Brother Chu, you really did not kill Wei Zheduan? Chu Xiu said with a serious expression, Brother Yuqi, you also suspect me? While I have conflicts with Wei Zheduan, he is still my superior. How can I, Chu Xiu, do such a disgraceful thing? Yuqi looked suspiciously at Chu Xiu. In any case, he did not believe Chu Xiu's words. However, he had not thought that Chu Xiu would tell him the truth. Yuqi said gravely, Brother Chu, you know how much trouble you have caused this time. Right now, the hall master has sent me to inform you to go to the main hall for questioning. The main hall will send people to investigate Wei Zheduan's death and the Wei family's matter. Come with me now. Of course, don't think about escaping. After Wei Zheduan's death, the experts of the criminal division immediately sealed off the roads to Guangzhou. You cannot escape. Chu Xiu smiled freely and said, I, Chu Xiu, have a clear conscience. Why should I escape? Yuqi looked deeply at Chu Xiu and said, I hope so. Since Brother Chu has a clear conscience, then come with me to the Guangzhou disciplinary hall to be interrogated. We have to leave now. I hope Brother Chu will not make things difficult for me. Yuqi's attitude toward Chu Xiu did not change much because he was not sure if Chu Xiu could make it through this time. If it was someone else who had killed their superior, they would certainly be heavily punished. The lightest punishment would be having their martial arts crippled and being imprisoned in the black dungeon for the rest of their lives. But if this person was Chu Xiu, then things would be different. With Chu Xiu's strength and talent, he had already become the face of the Guangzhou torture room. In the end, the Guangzhou torture room wanted to punish him. One reason was that it was a pity, and the other was that it felt like slapping his own face. So until the end, no one knew what Chu Xiu's fate would be. Chu Xiu said lightly, Don't worry. Since I have a clear conscience, I will not make things difficult for Brother Yuqi. Yuqi shrugged his shoulders. Whether Chu Xiu really had a clear conscience, only Chu Xiu himself knew. Anyway, his task was only to bring Chu Xiu to the main hall. He didn't care about anything else. However, according to Yuqi's understanding of Chu Xiu, although this person was a little crazy in some things, he was definitely not an idiot. Chu Xiu would not do something like putting himself in danger. Looking at Chu Xiu's calm appearance, could it be that he was already confident? The news that Chu Xiu followed Yuqi to the headquarters spread quickly. Of course, this was also the reason why Chu Xiu did not ask the Ghost Hand King and the others to cover up the news. As soon as this news came out, there was a sudden burst of discussion in the Guanxi area. Of course, there were also some people who secretly carried out all kinds of small tricks. Among the patrol envoys of the Guanxi region, Yang Ling was already Chu Xiu's man. Furthermore, he was a witness of this incident and was also Wei Zheduan's adopted son. Yang Ling had long been summoned to the headquarters alone. Fang Hua and Sidi Xing did not think much of it after hearing the news. They were not young anymore, and their ambitions were not that big. Although they were also afraid of the fact that Wei Zheduan had died in the hands of Chu Xiu, they did not dare to have any other thoughts. As for the remaining one, Jiang Taoran, he was secretly making some small moves. Jiang Taoran only had the strength of the three-flower realm. Even if Wei Zhoduan died, Chu Xiu could not return to Guanxi, and he could not be the penal officer. However, Jiang Taoran really did not want Chu Xiu to return to Guanxi. The reason was very simple: he could not accept Chu Xiu's strength. Although Jiang Taoran was low-key and slippery, he was actually a scheming person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to snatch a prefecture from the hands of Chu Xiu and Wei Hanshan during their fierce battle, and then reap the benefits. Previously, Chu Xiu's move to control the business lifeline of the entire Guanxi area had already made him very dissatisfied. Although Chu Xiu didn't let them suffer a loss and still gave them a large portion of the profits, Jiang Taoran was still dissatisfied. He was a patrol inspector, but in the end, he was like a puppet. He had no prestige at all. How could that be? He was not old guys like Sita Xing and Fang Hua, who had no ambition. As long as there were benefits, everything was negotiable. Therefore, Jiang Taoran secretly spread the news that Chu Xiu had killed Wei Zhoduan and that this time, he would be severely punished by the Guanzhong torture room. He tried to stir up the momentum in Guanxi and add fuel to the fire, so that Chu Xiu would not be able to return. However, Jiang Taoran was cautious by nature, and he was very careful. He only added fuel to the fire in the dark, and he did not dare to show himself. Compared to Jiang Taoran, there were people who did things more directly, such as the Zhang family of Yuan Continent. The Zhang family of Yuan Continent was the only big family in Guanxi that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Wei family of Zhouyuan. The Zhang family's great ancestor, Zhang Wanshan, also had the strength of the unity of heaven and man realm, but he was older than the Wei family's great ancestor. Zhang Wanshan was already more than 180 years old this year. Although warriors in the unity of heaven and man realm could theoretically live up to 200 years, this was only in theory. Warriors often had to face all kinds of killings in the pugilistic world. It was extremely cruel, and it was common for them to be seriously injured. When they fought with their lives on the line, they would even have to burn their blood essence. Although this kind of injury could be recovered in the later stages, it would still leave behind some hidden dangers. When a warrior's qi and blood declined, it would gradually erupt. Therefore, there were actually not many warriors who could live up to 200 years old at the unity of heaven and man realm. It was already not easy for the Zhang family's great ancestor to live to this age. At this time, the Zhang family's Zhang Kunz was reporting to Zhang Wanshan about Chu Xiu with a serious expression. Zhang Wanshan was wearing a golden brocade robe. His hair and beard were all white, but his face was still rosy. Although he was old, he was still a distance away from the end of his lifespan. After listening to Zhang Kunz's narration, after a while, Zhang Wanshan asked in a deep voice, "What do you think of this matter?" Zhang Kunz hesitated for a moment before saying, "It should be a good thing. The Wei family has been fighting with our Zhang family for so many years. Now that the Wei family has finally been destroyed, Chu Xiu was summoned to the headquarters this time. I reckon he's in trouble. Our Zhang family should be rising." Zhang Wanshan shook his head when he heard that. Without the lips, the teeth will feel the cold. You only saw the Wei family fighting with our Zhang family for so many years, but you didn't see the mutual support between our Zhang family and the Wei family all these years. Guanzhong torture room is Guanzhong torture room, and our pugilistic world forces are pugilistic world forces. No matter how we fight with the Wei family, we are on the same side. As long as Guanzhong torture room goes overboard, our two families can put down all the grudges and join hands at any time. Now that the Wei family has been destroyed, it's equivalent to losing half of the people to bear the pressure for our Zhang family. If anything happens in the future, our Zhang family will have to bear it alone. Zhang Kunz broke out in a cold sweat. After all, he was still young and could not see as far as Zhang Wanshan. Then, great ancestor, what should we do now? Zhang Wanshan said in a deep voice, "We can't let Chu Xiu return to Guanxi. You know Chu Xiu's character. He's ambitious and domineering. This time, we don't know what methods he used, but Wei Jiuduan and Wei Hanshan actually died in his hands. Our Zhang family has had conflicts with Chu Xiu before. If we let him return to Guanxi, what will happen to our Zhang family? We will probably become the second Wei family. Zhang Kunz hesitated. But how can our Zhang family influence the headquarters? My Zhang family doesn't have anyone in the headquarters. Zhang Wanshan said in a deep voice, we don't have anyone there, and we don't need them to do anything. Go and gather all the forces that have a good relationship with our Zhang family. Let's write a joint petition and request Guanzhong torture room to punish Chu Xiu. What the Guanzhong disciplinary hall wants is stability. Right now, Chu Xiu's existence has already caused the Guanxi region to be unstable. As long as we create a large enough commotion, even the Guanzhong disciplinary hall will not be able to ignore it. Zhang Kunz nodded repeatedly after hearing this. The great ancestor was indeed the great ancestor. He was indeed far-sighted. In the martial world, there were some things that could be solved even if one didn't rely on fighting and killing. Just like now, the Zhang family only needed to move their lips, and they could increase the pressure on Chu Xiu in the main hall. At this time, Chu Xiu still did not know about the changes in Guanxi. After arriving at Guanzhong City, Chu Yuanqing personally came to pick up Chu Xiu. Seeing Chu Xiu, Chu Yuanqing sighed and said, Brother Chu, how did things become like this? Did you really kill Wei Jiuduan? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Big brother, don't you believe me? I, Chu Xiu, have always been a person who doesn't offend others if they don't offend me. I was forced to do this. Chu Xiu did not say that he killed Wei Jiuduan, but he also did not say that he did not kill Wei Jiuduan. However, psychologically, Chu Yuanqing was on Chu Xiu's side. His life was saved by Chu Xiu, and although Chu Xiu had always been extremely ruthless, it seemed that Chu Xiu had never taken the initiative to attack him. So subconsciously, Chu Yuanqing was still on Chu Xiu's side. Chapter 334. Chu Yuanqing rarely interfered with the affairs of the Guanzhong torture room, but this time, Chu Yuanqing really didn't want anything to happen to Chu Xiu. Looking at Yuqi, Chu Yuanqing said in a low voice, Brother Chu has done so much for the Guanzhong torture room, and now you're going to punish him because of a groundless matter? Yuqi smiled bitterly and said, Hero Chu, you've misunderstood. The hall master and the other lords don't want Brother Chu to be wrongly accused, so they called him to the main hall for questioning. If Brother Chu is innocent, then they will naturally refute the rumors. Moreover, the hall master only invited Brother Chu here, not arrested him. Otherwise, the people going would not be me, but those guys from the criminal division. Don't worry, Hero Chu. Tomorrow, the hall master and the others will gather at the main hall to discuss this matter. Brother Chu is the face of the Guanzhong torture room, so the hall master and the others will definitely handle this matter carefully. Chu Yuanqing nodded and said, That's good. Since it's like this, Brother Chu can stay at my place today. Is there any problem? Yuqi nodded and said, Of course, Brother Chu is not a prisoner. Naturally, you can stay wherever you want. Chu Xiu didn't escape halfway. Now that they were in Guanzhong City, Yuqi naturally didn't worry that Chu Xiu would escape. After Chu Yuanqing brought Chu Xiu to his house, he immediately said to him, Brother Chu, don't worry. I'll go talk to Brother Guan and guarantee that you'll be fine this time. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, Brother Chu, you don't have to do this. Your identity is special. If you talk to Hall Master Guan about these things, I'm afraid it won't be good. It'll be easy for others to gossip. Chu Yuanqing snorted and said, Let whoever wants to say it. Do you think I'm afraid of them? As Chu Kuangga's only son, this legacy could last for a long time. As long as Guan Siyu was still alive, this legacy could also last for a day. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, Thank you very much, Brother Chu. However, there is one more thing I need to trouble Brother Chu with. I need to trouble Brother Chu to give something to someone. As he spoke, Chu Xiu took out a box and handed it to Chu Yuanqing. Chu Yuanqing asked in surprise, To whom? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, Give it to Mrs. Guan. Hearing that Chu Xiu wanted to give the item to Mei Qinglian, Chu Yuanqing couldn't help but frown. Why are you giving it to her? Chu Xiu smiled and said, it's just a small gift for Mrs. Guan. It's used to please a woman. You have to know that sometimes, a woman's pillow talk is more effective than any words. Chu Yuanqing curled his lips and said, Brother Guan isn't the kind of person who is obsessed with women. I guess it's a waste of time for you to give it. Chu Xiu smiled and didn't speak. He didn't know whether Guan Siyu was obsessed with women or not, but Chu Xiu only knew that Mei Qinglian was not a simple woman. In fact, it was really meaningless for Chu Yuanqing to go this time. Whether it was Guan Siyu or the other people in the Guanzhong torture room, they could accommodate Chu Yuanqing on small matters, but they wouldn't let Chu Yuanqing mess around on such a big matter. However, Chu Yuanqing didn't notice this. Holding the thing that Chu Xiu gave him, Chu Yuanqing went straight to the headquarters. On the way, Chu Yuanqing didn't open the box that Chu Xiu gave him. Although he was also curious about what was inside, Chu Yuanqing's character was still trustworthy. If Chu Xiu didn't let him open it, he naturally couldn't open it. When he came to the study, Guan Siyu was still dealing with official business. Seeing that Chu Yuanqing had come, Guan Siyu directly asked before he could speak, Are you here for Chu Xiu's matter? Chu Yuanqing was stunned. He swallowed what he was about to say and just nodded. It's because of Chu Xiu. Brother Guan, since Chu Xiu joined the Guanzhong torture room, he has made a lot of contributions to the Guanzhong torture room. If you punish him now, I'm afraid that the other disciples of the Guanzhong torture room will be bitterly disappointed. Guan Siyu shook her head and said, If it was something else, I can promise you, but Chu Xiu's matter is a bit too big. It must be dealt with strictly. He has made a lot of contributions to the Guanzhong torture room, but if he really offended his superiors and killed his colleagues, I will definitely not forgive him. Seeing that Chu Yuanqing still wanted to say something, Guan Siyu shook her head and said, All right, Yuanqing, go out. From now on, don't get involved in this matter. Chu Yuanqing had known Guan Siyu since he was a child, so he naturally knew what kind of character Guan Siyu had. Hearing that Guan Siyu said it resolutely, Chu Yuanqing knew that he wouldn't relent, so he could only leave resentfully. After walking a distance away from the study, Chu Yuanqing remembered that he still had something to give to Mei Qinglian. However, as a man, wasn't it a little too reckless to break into Guan Siyu's house? Just as Chu Yuanqing was in a dilemma, he happened to see Mei Qinglian walk in from outside. He quickly handed the box to Mei Qinglian and said softly, Sister-in-law, this is what Chu Xiu wants to give you. I hope you can put in a good word for my brother in front of the hall master. When he said this, Chu Yuanqing lowered his head. He didn't even dare to look at Mei Qinglian's eyes. For some reason, he didn't fear Guan Siyu at all, but he was a little afraid of Mei Qinglian. After taking the box, a strange look appeared in Mei Qinglian's eyes. She slowly said, As a woman, I shouldn't meddle in master's affairs. However, no matter what, Chu Xiu is an outstanding talent of the Guanzhong torture room's younger generation. It's better to handle this matter carefully. Don't worry, I'll talk to master. Hearing Mei Qinglian say this, Chu Yuanqing also breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly left. After nightfall, Chu Xiu was sitting in Chu Yuanqing's guest room with a cup of tea in his hand, as if he was waiting for someone. After a while, a black demonic aura rose in the room out of nowhere. As the demonic aura lingered, Mei Qinglian, who was wearing a red dress, walked out. Her red lips were like fire, and coupled with her cold face, it added to her charm. However, Mei Qinglian didn't look like an ordinary weak woman. Her aura was extremely powerful, and even Chu Xiu could feel the immense pressure. Mei Qinglian said calmly, Chu Xiu, do you know that you're playing with fire now? You discovered my secret and even lured me here. Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you? Chu Xiu poured a cup of tea for Mei Qinglian and said slowly, If a martial Dao master wants to kill me, he doesn't even need to say a word. He can crush me with a finger. Since I'm fine now, it proves that Madam doesn't want to kill me yet, right? Mei Qinglian looked at Chu Xiu with a strange look in her eyes. Actually, she had always been interested in Chu Xiu. She had seen many young talents in the pugilistic world. She had even seen the little celestial master Zhang Qingjin before. However, it was the first time that someone from a humble background could reach the heights that Chu Xiu had. Mei Qinglian's beautiful eyes twitched, and she said calmly, "I won't kill you now, but it doesn't mean that I won't kill you in the next moment. Women are fickle, don't you know? Tell me, how did you know that I'm from the devil cult? Also, who are you? Why do you know the totem of the Devil Heart Hall?" Mei Qinglian took out a piece of silk cloth. There was a complicated and strange pattern drawn on it. This was the totem of the Kunlun Devil cult's Devil Heart Hall. Other than the orthodox inheritors of the Kunlun Devil cult, no one else knew about this thing. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "There are many people who practice devil arts in this world. However, to have such pure devil qi and hide it secretly, other than the Kunlun Devil cult, I can't think of anyone else. If Madam is from the Kunlun Devil cult, you'll naturally be able to recognize this thing. If you can't, I have other excuses to deal with it. As for why I know about this thing, it's very simple. It's because I'm also a disciple of the Kunlun Devil cult. The devil is formless, and the great Tao is boundless. The holy fire refines the heart, and the devil flame devours the sky. I inherited the technique of the Devil Heart Hall's Hall Master, 9 Transformation Devil Heart, Nangong Wuming. Of course, it's not surprising that I know about this." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Mei Qinglian was not as shocked as Mr. Lu in the past. This was because she had already guessed in this aspect. She had even tried to test Chu Xiu before. After all, Chu Xiu had too many devil arts. If he had obtained them all by chance, it would be too much of a coincidence. If not for the fact that Chu Xiu also knew the techniques of Buddhism and Taoism, Mei Qinglian could even confirm that Chu Xiu was from the devil cult. Later, after Chu Xiu obtained the heavenly demon dance, Mei Qinglian had also tried to test Chu Xiu's attitude towards the Kunlun Devil cult. After all, whether it was the righteous Tao or the rogue cultivators in Jianghu, most people did not have a good impression of the devil cult. However, Chu Xiu was different. He did not seem to have a bad impression of the Kunlun Devil cult. Mei Qinglian suddenly thought of what Chu Xiu had done in Eastern Qi. She asked, "Have you been in contact with the people of the Phaseless Devil sect?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Yes, Mr. Lu from the Phaseless Devil sect helped me a lot." Mei Qinglian sneered and said, "Mr. Lu? Are you talking about that kid Lu Jin?" Their Phaseless Demon sect was extremely loyal to the Kunlun Demon sect. Even now, they were still shouting, "Saint sect," as though they had gone mad. "You can't be thinking that I'm the same as those fellows from the Phaseless Demon sect, selflessly helping you after hearing that you're a disciple of the Kunlun Demon sect, right? I forgot to tell you that although I have a relationship with the Kunlun Devil cult, I am not a direct descendant of the Kunlun Devil cult. I am a member of the Maiden Demon sect. How can you expect a sect that has been destroyed to be loyal to the Kunlun Devil cult? Not to mention that you are just a lucky person who accidentally obtained the inheritance of the Kunlun Devil cult. Even if you are the successor of the Patriarch Dugu, why should I help you selflessly?" Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. He did not expect that Mei Qinglian's real identity was the same as Mr. Lu and the others. She was not a direct descendant of the Kunlun Devil cult. The Maiden Demon sect was one of the vassal sects of the Kunlun Devil cult in the past. Just like the Yunu Palace, there were only female disciples in the entire sect. However, the Maiden Demon sect was more unlucky. The Phaseless Devil sect was only hidden in the dark. Their own strength was still very strong, and they were still one of the 7 sects and 8 schools. However, the Maiden Demon sect had disappeared without a trace 100 years ago. Even the pugilistic world thought that the Maiden Demon sect had completely lost its inheritance. They did not expect that there was still a Mei Qinglian. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.